All right. Anyway, so welcome back to any of the listeners. Have you guys checked out the summer update yet? That just came out.
Yes.
I I have not yet. I looked a little bit to see if there was maybe a good demo cosmetic, but that was it.
There was a nice beanie hat with a thing on top or whatever,
Let's
but I
see.
think that was it for demo.
I've given up on looking at cosmetics. I don't think I've cared about a cosmetic that they've added in like the last 3 years, so I just don't even bother to look anymore.
I
I
have
think
like a loadout theory where you want to make like a good two cosmetic pair, and then the third one you can kind of just swap out for flavor. So sometimes like there'll be a new one that fits that kind of third spot.
it's funny because for me, the what I have done, generally speaking, has been on every class. I have like one strange cosmetic, and then I swap out the other 2 for the A, B, like, C and D loadouts, so I just have 1 that's on all 4, and then 2, like, a new pair for each of
Mm.
them. So that way, like, and usually I assign them to, like, a loadout, so, like, if we're playing sixes or whatever, like, if you see me with, like, if we're defending last and I come up with, like, kind of an older soldier looking loadout, like, I have, like, the soldier stash on or whatever,
Mhm.
then I'm using the shotgun, like, we're defending last, I have the
That is
shotgun on,
funny.
or, like,
That
etcetera.
reminds me actually, the Med Slice Rogue has 2 different loadouts for crits and Uber with, like, 2 very different looking unusuals. You can kind of tell, like, at a distance which one he's using.
Yeah. For me, it's quite obvious, so, like, if I have, like, I have a green loadout, which used to be the, like, in, pubs, "Alright, please, I know what I'm doing, please, like, give me heals" loadout, but in sixes, that's I'm using the Zatoichi loadout,
Mm.
so, like, I have, like, each one set for, like, a specific scenario, like, if I'm on, like, my D loadout, which is, like, my banner, like, I'm running, conch or, battalions, etcetera, so yeah, I do think that's funny, but of the loadouts I did of or sorry, of all the new cosmetics, I did look through them. I did like the spy ties cosmetics. I thought that was pretty good. I've been waiting for something like that for a long time as someone who used to be a tie snob because of work. So, like, just having nice ties is like for me is awesome. I don't know, but I haven't played any of the maps yet. I have been trying to take a break from TF2, like, since I finally uploaded the how to engineer in sixes video. I just and I've been busy the past week, so, like, yesterday and today, I finally got to, like, play some Helldivers for the first time in a while, so I was, like, having a great time.
Nice.
I played a
But
couple of the new maps, and my first impressions were that it's just a lot of eye candy and not a lot of
Mm.
substance. But that's what I felt about some of the older maps, like Phoenix, and my mind changed. So I'm gonna give it a couple months before I pass final judgment on them.
I think Phoenix was a map when it was added I wasn't a huge fan of initially, but it grew on me very quickly. Same thing for there's that payload map. I forget the name of it. It's like Greek. And it's
Odyssey.
like all downhill.
Yes.
Odyssey, yes. I at first the first time I saw Odyssey and I was like, okay, it's a little bright looking, and I had to get used to the layout a little bit, but I really like Odyssey now. I just find it like a very interesting map where, blue always has the advantage because you're, fighting from high ground going to low ground, and I we haven't really had a map like that. Um, so it's just a new environment to play in, and I like that a lot.
It's
Yeah,
kind
as
of
far as, like, new maps, I don't know. Well, actually, I really liked, I don't like Payload, and I know that's, like, controversial, but that's, like I just don't like pubbing on it. I usually prefer the asymmetrical or no, symmetrical game modes. Um, so, I mean, Monster or not Monster, Atom Smash was one that, I enjoyed that got released, but the Halloween version, I think, got in first.
Yeah, Monster Bash, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, I agree. I love, player destruction just as a game mode in general.
Yeah.
I think it's I mean, I know it's just like Headhunter from Halo, but for me, it's a kind of a two-pronged approach. One, because it is like the quote unquote like team deathmatch that TF2 it doesn't really need because we kind of have that in a way. But number two, more importantly, I feel like if we had more player destruction maps, it would take away the stigma of treating payload race maps
Mm.
like team deathmatch, like how it is on Hightower, and that kind of bleeds over. Like I love Pipeline and Nightfall, um, and I always have. Like Nightfall is still one of my favorite maps in the game, but people because of Hightower, they kinda just treat it like TDM, and I'm like or sometimes, and I'm like, "Ah, damn." It didn't help that Banana Bay is basically just like Payload Race 2 for it, but it
I
kinda
love
made
Banana
that
Boat.
I hate that map. It I mean, it's not a bad map, don't get me wrong. It's just that the layout I the way that people play it is like how a lot of people play Hightower, and it just bleeds into, like it takes over the, like, actually treating the, like, payload race as payload race and treats it more of, TDM. Um, it kind of overtakes that in the marketplace of ideas, or whatever, and I think that's probably why I dislike the map more. That and the enormous sniper sightline as soon as you come out of spawn probably doesn't help, but, whatever.
Yeah.
But either way, so, I mean, we just had LAN again, the RGL LAN, and you just came back from that. I saw your thoughts on, like, how things
Yes.
went down, and, we have both leagues facilitating their own LANs like RGL, and then we have these other organizations, like we with the, Denver LAN, and it seems to be, like, just a good time to be a Sixes player. I know there's gonna be a Highlander LAN not too long from now, from my understanding, or something like
Yeah,
that.
in, Europe.
Yeah. Yes, 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 exactly. And so, like, it's just a good time to be a competitive TF2 player. And, so do you think that there's, like, a future that you see kinda, like, growing in the scene right now?
I would like to see lands become more established. I'd like to see kind of a culture develop around LAN attendance without it being tied to participation, because yeah, for a lot of people, whether they go or not really just comes down to whether they can find a team or not. And
Mhm.
I get that. I mean, I have participated at every LAN I've gone to by either playing or doing production stuff. So there's like
Yeah.
a reason for me to be there besides just attendance. But one of like the limiting factors that I have heard from people organizing these events is that to run a TF2 LAN
Yeah.
with the actual like appropriate number of teams for it to be like worthwhile for people.
Yes.
The number of venues that you can actually book that are viable are really limited to where
Yeah.
like, Philly, you have enough computers, Denver, you have enough. But like I'm in Chicago and have been wanting like a Midwest LAN forever, but there's just not viable
Yeah.
venues to also have like an open tournament.
Yeah, I have been involved a little bit in the conversation for lands and RGL, and I remember them trying to pick locations, and they're like, "Okay, well, we need this many computers." It's like, awesome. That just eliminated 95% of the
Yeah.
locations in the entire United States. And so and the thing as well is that I know RGL generally has been trying to avoid, like, bring your own computer LANs, in the past. Maybe that'll change, I don't know. I'm not involved in that, I can't say one way or the other. But I think if we did something like that, it might change it, might open more locations. I'm from Ohio, so, like, or Central Ohio, I mean, I'm in Columbus right now. And so, like, for me, like, driving all the way out to Philly or going out to Boston just sucks.
Yeah.
And there's no, I am not in the North. I know, like, you guys up in Chicago, you can I mean, it'll suck, but you could take Amtrak out there, or
Mhm.
fly, but, like, we don't have any rail connection in Columbus. I'd have to go all the way up to Toledo, which no one should ever go to, like, be able to get on the Amtrak, and as someone who's been to that station a few times, I don't think I'd be comfortable leaving any vehicle there. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, like, there's like gaming venues and stuff around here, but I know that there's like just not enough, and I think it's a bit of a shame. The thing for me that I am more interested in is like we have seen in other games where you have like either you can take for me like what I'm like interested in. So like I have like there's like Halo, there's Pokemon, and there's Smash. And in all of them, they also have like minor tournaments in like states. Like you might have a statewide tournament or you have a region tournament or whatever. So like say we had like RGL land and like we had this Denver land or whatever, but imagine if we also had like a Midwest land and it's in Indiana or,
Hmm.
in Wisconsin or whatever. And then, we have another one like just for the West Coast and one for the Northeast and whatever. Like I think that would be cool. I'm just not sure what attendance would be like, just for the reason that I mean, having talked to just like Highlander players, like right now I'm on a Highlander team and not a Sixes team. And don't get me wrong, I'm having fun, but I prefer Sixes personally. Um, but they didn't even know that there was a LAN going on. So like they were like getting like we were talking about scrims last week and they're like, "Oh," and one of them was like, "Oh, we don't there's no match this past week because of LAN." And they're like, "What are you talking about?" And I'm just sitting here like, "Oh no." Like how do they not know? But I don't know. Go ahead.
Yeah, I do think that the more regional stuff is pretty viable. I mean, RGB sticks out to me as a kind of long-standing example of that, which is in Philly, not in the same venue though. But that's been going pretty strong for years. Obviously, it's not something that like Froyo is making it out to. It's usually
Mhm.
just like a Sandblast team winning it. But if there's enough like East Coast attendees, then yeah, it's like viable. I think that the same could be said for really any region, like especially the Midwest, but people just kind of need to organize that.
I think the main issue is like in comparison to like I'll use Philly as an example because I've been to Philly for LAN. And I really don't and I had a great time in Philly and I've heard a lot of people kind of shit on Philly, not the land, but like like the city. And I had a great time when I was there. So I don't know what people are talking about. But the main thing with Philly, like, I've been able to hear people from, like, Virginia, like, they're like, "Oh, yeah, I just got a train ticket to go up," or, they flew in and whatever, it's very accessible. Whereas, like, I mean, I think the only place that would be, like, moderately accessible in the Midwest would probably be, like, Chicago, obviously, and maybe, like, Minneapolis. I think this is kind of in stark contrast into, like, uh going to Europe, and so, like, I'm kind of surprised they don't have more lands in Europe,
Mm.
because like, even if you go to like, there was that Pole land, in,
Yep.
Poland recently, but even if you go to, like, Germany, like, if you're just an EU citizen, you can get the Deutschland ticket, which is basically, other than the ICEs, like, the super fast, like, 200-mile-an-hour trains. You get all public transport for the entire month for $50. So,
Wow.
like, I mean, I think the problem is like accessibility. So, like, people over there, you can come in from France, you can come in from Spain, and like the transportation isn't as big of a deal. Whereas for me, like, if I didn't drive to Philly, like, it would have cost me, like an over $1,000 plane ticket to go.
Yeah.
And I think that might be part of it. Go ahead,
I
Rocco.
gotta butt in here as a Midwesterner. I gotta point out to those who are watching, maybe from Europe or other places in the US, that I'm not gonna fly. Period. Like, I'm from the Midwest. We don't do that. We always drive. At least drive
I
from. And so
I
if I wanted to attend the Philly LAN or the Denver LAN, I mean, I could fly, but it would be egregiously expensive, and that's just not. I barely ever fly, so it's just kind of out of the question for me to go, because it would be really expensive, or it would take a long time to drive. And so I
as
personally have been shouting into the void for years now that we need to have a Chicago
yeah.
LAN. It's a central location,
I
and it's not that long of a drive for me. So
Yeah, I agree. I think after living in the EU for a year, I realized that Europeans, I mean, also I've had met and had European friends that came here to the US, but they never realize how expensive transportation is here in the US. So like, I mean, I flew to like Paris, like, and I got the ticket the day before because I fucked up my scheduling. That's a whole different story. I scheduled on the wrong week. So I had to get it the day of. The day of, I'm at the airport. I'm literally booking the flight as I'm at the airport. And to fly from Munich to Paris, again, like an hour before this flight leaves, was like $400. And to many people that, that's could be expensive. But I'm sitting here like because I had to go to New York City to go to the meet the Austrian consulate general to get my residence permit in Austria before I went. And just to fly one way was almost $1,000.
Wow.
And so, whereas all my other flights or whatever that I had looked at in Europe were, a fraction of the cost to go from one place to another. Not to say that, just because I know Europe, the entirety of Europe is the size of America, but like even when I flew from the US to there, I mean, I paid, I think it was like $1,200 for my flight. And the Austrian guy who was sitting right next to me, because he booked his while he was in Austria, I think he paid like 300 euro. And I was like, this is insane. And then I learned that you should, if you're ever booking a flight to the EU, you should just VPN yourself to be in Europe or into a EU country before booking the flight. But regardless, but yeah, I was the exact same way. I mean, I drove to the Philly land, and I remember in my like I played Engineer in Sixes video, like I had mentioned that. And you have all the people. I had a lot of comments that calling me crazy because I drove, I think it was like 13 hours, 13, 14 hours overnight because we finished our scrims and I was like, well, I'm not tired, so I might as well leave now. And so I did. Um, but and people are like being like, only in America would you drive 13 hours. I'm like, I mean, yeah, we're in the Midwest. So you have to,
It's
and
in our
I'm not
blood.
gonna pay that much. Yeah, exactly. Like, corn, soybeans, and driving. Like, of course.
Mm.
Anyway, Rumpus, so what's your favorite map in the pool right now, like in the rotation, or is there like any maps that you'd like to see that you've seen like come up, um, in the work like from TF2 maps or anything along those lines?
Are we talking competitive rotation or
Competitive,
casual?
both, I
Okay.
guess, but I was primarily focusing on competitive, but we can talk about casual as well.
Right. Well, competitively, I think that my favorite 5CP is probably Sunshine, to be honest.
Oh, yeah.
Favorite Koth, definitely Bagel. I think that I'd like to see some Bagel clones come out because it really did um, kind of elucidate a lot of what makes Koth good or bad. Namely, I think that having kind of some separation in like different areas that aren't all able to just spam out the point, it's kind of nice. And a point that caps quickly is really nice as well because you can kind of convert like much more narrow advantages.
Right.
Um, as far as stuff that I'd like to see, I mean, there are a handful of maps that come and go that I'd like to see come back. I mean, I was a Reckoner fan. I think Reckoner was fun. Um, and just newer maps as well. Like Villa, I don't think the most recent version has been played.
Yeah, it's not.
Yeah, and I like Villa, and a lot of the people I speak to have enjoyed Villa as well.
It's funny because I am maybe not Villa's number one fan, but I'm one of them. I love Villa, and I remember when we were doing the testing to like test maps to get back in the pool and whatever. Um, Sultry was the one that came out on the top for that, which is why Villa was not in the pool. But when doing the like the polling for Villa, it just never won out, unfortunately. And I would like to see it again. I really liked Villa when it was around. I'm not a Reckoner fan personally, but Villa was probably like the 5CP map that I really liked. Um, there's another map that I'll talk about later, in one of our other topics that I'm kind of interested in as well. But I think my favorite Koth map used to be Clear Cut, but it is very quickly became Bagel because I think both as a player, like I know like dying when you're holding a point just in general is bad because you have the slower respawn compared to the attacking team. But I feel like it doesn't like if you are as someone who's like a soldier player, you're playing for, to deny space or making space or you're going for a trade. Like say you go and you're like, oh, you have an opportunity to kill the demo man and you take it or whatever and you
Mhm.
die. It doesn't feel as punishing, I guess,
Yeah.
when playing Bagel because of the fast respawns, being able to edge the point, like, if, we're kind of pushing them out, like, I feel like the space that I'm making for my team is a lot more impactful than it is on, like, Product, for example, where, like, we can now pressure the point really well to retake it because now they're backing off the point, and then say we get the cap, and now they have to come back into us, like, I think that is just it has I think Bagel is probably my favorite map in the pool right now. It used to be Sunshine, but I think Bagel is just number one personally. Um, Broccoli, do you have any thoughts?
Oh yeah, Bagel's my, as far as sixes map goes. I've always liked Bagel a lot more than Product, and I don't know. I thought Clear Cut was fun, but I know that there's a lot of complaints about that map, and I think that they are definitely based in fact.
Yeah.
Because that map, I think Product is probably better, but I think Bagel's the best out of the three. I mean, I played demo, so Bagel gets the thumbs up from me because I think demo's insanely good on that map. And
It does help. Go ahead.
yeah,
Sorry.
and also as somebody who's played Soldier, Bagel is also easily my favorite map to play Soldier on as well. And I kind of, my experience kind of mirrors what you said, where I just felt like and maybe this is just a skill issue, but I felt like I was far more useful on that map than I was like on Product, because on Product, I was either like sitting really passive and spamming rockets or like bombing in. And on Bagel, I feel like you just have more ability to like get value without either like going in or just playing super passive because of the houses. Like you can push a side house and it's like separate enough from the actual point. And you can't really do that on Product. Like you either have to like bomb behind or stay back. And I just think Bagel is the best Koth map in the sixes rotation. And as far
I
as
was gonna
5
say,
CP, I would also just say Sunshine. I just think Sunshine's the
yeah.
most fun in my experience as well.
I think it does help that I do have a bias to where I mean I think they like from the engineer in sixth season and having to watch probably 1,000 hours of demos, like going back through them for the video that I just made. Um, it does help that I think the best map for engineer hands down is Bagel. So that probably adds a little bit to that. I mean, you sent me that log from the other day that you had where BBL was top fragging or whatever as engineer on Bagel when you guys were doing that scrim. So that probably does help a little bit. But I had liked it already before then. Um, but yeah. Actually, speaking of which, so Broccoli, you just finished your video on the beggars. So
Yep.
with all the stuff from Antony and stuff like that, Rumpus, do you have any thoughts about it? Because like I know like
Yes.
it came up really fast with Antony. I remember being an admin, people were pissed off, they wanted it banned, blah blah blah. And
Oh,
then now it's like it's dead. Like no one talks about the beggars anymore. I don't get any more tickets. I don't get people messaging me to ban the beggars anymore. Like it's like it's silence, you know. So
yeah.
what do you think?
I'm surprised to hear that actually, because I've talked about the beggars before. I think that it is really unique, obviously, and it
Yep.
unambiguously lets soldiers do things that they just could not otherwise with other rocket launchers. I mean, you can make the case that like, oh, like an extra rocket with the Liberty launcher might enable like a certain rollout to mid or something. Like Beggars kind of
Yep.
blows that out of the water.
Yeah.
And watching, yeah, like Anthony Pug and whatnot,
Yeah.
and he's put so much time into it that he is like doing rollouts and things that you wouldn't have even really considered. And people really thought that beggars would be kind of a thing. I mean, I know multiple soldiers, including like Soapy, would pull out the beggars for sacks on occasion because it unambiguously lets soldiers have more aggressive moments than
Mhm.
you otherwise would. But I think overall, full-time beggars is probably not super viable, or at least you need to put in so much work to make it happen just because as a soldier you're not only doing aggressive things, and the beggars really really sucks defensively. Like you can't just hold a door with it. You don't
Yeah.
have rockets loaded. You kind of need to be preempting your peaks and spam and aggression in a way that yeah, it's just not reliable enough on soldier full time, I think.
Yeah, I would agree. That was the experience that I had with my little challenge that I did, where I used the beggars, and my it was heavily inspired by watching Anthony just completely dunk on people with the beggars like in sixes, and I'm like, wow, I have like at the time like 5,000 hours on this game, and I've just never used this weapon really, and I gave it a
Yeah.
shot. And what stood out to me immediately is that this is like way like it's harder because you have to figure out like all the jumping mechanics, but once you get a hang of that, it's at least for me at the time it was more fun than stock. But I quickly
Mhm.
realized what you had said, where you can't you lose a lot of your defensive capabilities with the Beggar's Bazooka because of the way that the loading works, and so you kind of just become I coined it the ICBM soldier, where you're really good at
Yeah.
bombing, and you can bomb in ways that you would never expect having if you didn't know about the weapon and haven't seen people use it. But you're just kind of worse at most other aspects. So you
Mhm.
kind of lose a little bit of that like generalist uh, flavor, if you will, in my experience.
For me, I think that's like one of the marks of something that's good for competitive TF2 in general, though, just because you have like an item like the beggars here, where it enables just an entirely different playstyle of soldier. Like you're going from you're definitively losing something through the defensive side, but now you're gaining something from the other way. And while I'm not like beggar like Antony obviously is gonna be, like, the person that people think of, but, like you were saying before, where you have, like, Soapy swapping off to go to Beggars, I think it's as a viewer, it is interesting to see people choosing different options as time goes on for like what is best for each situation and kind of being able to observe that, learn from that, being like, oh, okay, like when people are sacking, like, or when Soapy sacks, sometimes he goes like this, sometimes he goes with this, loadout or whatever. And so, like, trying to figure out what he, like, that high level player, as someone who's like maybe wanting to learn or just viewing, like, subconsciously learning about like what they're going through, what their choices are. I think that that's cool personally.
Yeah, I think in general, it's a very soldier thing, and it's something that players really don't do ever. Because on classes like Demo or Scout or Med, which unlock your choosing, is not so much situational with like the exception of crits. As a demo, like maybe you're switching to Zatoichi on last because you have to build in that moment, but you're not really like anticipating what you're going to need an unlock for and coming up on it. Whereas Soldier has so many like viable situational unlocks from man treads to the banners to even direct hit and beggars to pain train and all these, but you just don't see players switch very frequently, in
I
part
think
because like you can only anticipate so much and sometimes things happen, but also I think
yes.
most of it is probably just like people kind of forgetting to, because like the default is often good enough if you play well.
Yeah,
I think the other go ahead,
I was
Bradley.
watching your video, Rumpus, a couple days ago about people not. I forgot what the video was called, but it was about like little optimizations that people don't do. And I would think that the beggars kind of falls into this category. Like you mentioned, people not switching to spy to check for off classes, and I think that in like a theoretical perfect world where people had all day, like they didn't have a job and they just played TF2 for like 10 years straight, I think we would see like way more of that play, like switch into the Beggar's Bazooka for us to do some weird, funky sack. But I think it just comes down to playing default is usually going to get the job done with significantly less like time invested because, as I kind of mentioned
Yeah.
before, the Beggars, it's unique enough from stock that you have to relearn it, and to apply that to a very high level of play is going to take a lot of time invested into the weapon.
Yeah, I think with something like the man treads, it is literally just comes down to whether you like the trade-off for the sack you're about to take. But something like beggars, whether it is worth using or not, really depends on the amount of time you put into it, because yeah, it is just drastically different.
I think the other thing with it as well is that, because I talked to Dane about this, for example, with Engineer, because Engineer very, very, very much benefits from micromanaging your loadouts, both in uh, casual to Highlander to even sixes, in my
Yep.
experience. And I think that is kind of like Engineer is like the very like prime example of this. But I think because of Soldier's role in sixes, and to be fair, I've only played up to I mean I barely played main, but I'll just say up to main or like up to IM. So like this is from a lower level perspective. Like I as someone who played Pocket Soldier, and so like I didn't need to have like the gunboats like, super glued to my feet like roamers do. So like for me, I think it was more of like you have the opportunity to swap a lot more. Like if you're the sacking soldier, if you die, and you're stalemating or whatever's going on, you can quickly adapt to that situation. So like say you're sacking to last or whatever. Cool. Well, now you're dead and you're pushing last. So I mean, the pain train, like you don't need the escape plan probably.
Hmm.
That and like, or anything like that. Your scouts are probably good to go. So like you're just you don't need to worry about building. So you might as well equip the pain train. So just in case you get on the cap, you're gonna cap like almost instantly. So
Yep.
like you might as well do it. Or, you know, for me, like I often like holding last. Like if we're at last already, I might as well swap to either using a shotgun, like if we have super disad, or one of the banners, normally Conquer or battalions, depending on the situation. Or the last, like I think, for example, Conqueror is better on Villa last compared to the battalions, just because of how large it is. But like making that choice in that moment, like you just have, I think you have the opportunity more as a soldier compared to the other classes, because like scouts, you know, you have to deny bombs or swap to engineer if you're on last or whatever. Or if you're even if when you're pushing, like if you know, you don't normally the sacking player or the double sack or whatever, a soldier is going to be involved. Whereas like demo, you can't sack. You gotta watch the sticks. You know, you gotta make sure that no one gets through. You know, there's no like I think the only time I think I've seen the Scottish Resistance used in sixes like 4 times. I've seen like I think it was it Banny crash out on like Villa because I think it was Artist used Scottish Resistance to hold last on ironically Villa forever ago, which was really funny back in I think it was like season 3, season 4, something like that. But like
Yeah.
you very, very, very rarely ever see like the opportunity for a demo to even be able to consider that. I think that is part of the problem, just because demo is so important, and whereas soldier is like not in a literal case, but it is kind of like the quote unquote like throwaway person. Like you're like, okay, go die, you know, or go do
Yeah.
whatever. So I
Yeah.
think
When
that's
you're
part
like
of it.
when you're dying more often, the opportunity cost of switching off is just way, way lower.
Hmm.
Yeah, I do think there was a moment when Scottish Resistance had a chance, I think. Um, and it was particularly with Mig on Rome at the time was using that. And he was also
Oh, yeah.
experimenting with like quickies on mid. And I think through like the Rome Banny demo review connection, we did see Banny using it in invite grands, maybe invite playoffs,
Yeah.
either the season after or something. But honestly, like it for a lot of lasts, like if you have the time, it's kind of hard to not justify running Scottish Resistance, which is something I've never done just because it's so easy to get in the habit of like, I don't want to have to like switch off. It's a pain in the ass to walk back to spawn for the push out. But if you hold last, like that is just better.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think one part of it though would be that would might get you to lose though is like say you're resupping or whatever. You know, they push you into spawn and you're trying to rotate out the other spawn and they get on the point. Like you don't even need to look at the point when you're using stock stickies if you have stickied the point, whereas if it's scatters resistance, well then I guess the other trade-off there is like you can actually see your stickies through walls. So give and a take, I guess. You would know that they got blown off. But I don't know. I really enjoyed as a pocket soldier being able to have like the unlock variety that really only the flank scout kind of has, but only a little bit. You get to choose to use the winger or the pistol. And then other than that, maybe the rap assassin, but probably Boston Basher in case your pocket dies. But I don't know.
I think nowadays Rap Assassin is very much the flank scout preference. Um, There is certainly like reason to use the Boston Basher, but yeah, the spam of the Rap Assassin is quite nice, and it might even get banned. We'll have to see.
I think I've only ever seen one video about it in North America. So I mean, we'll see how the conversation evolves on it. Because I know it did in E2F2L at
Yes,
what was it, 2 seasons ago or something like that. Same, but yeah. So speaking of which, you previously and one of your most popular videos was talking about the Loch-n-Load. So how do you feel about it, like in general now? And I know Broccoli is a lock hater, so I'll let you guys kind of
I've
kick it
got
off
my
here.
complaints locked and loaded here. I'll let Rumpus go first.
yeah. I think that overall, I'm ambivalent on whether it should be banned or not. I personally don't have issues playing against it like a lot of people do. I do think some people are just kind of like serial catchers, to be honest. And like when you do pay attention to it, it really isn't as bad. But that being said, it is like inarguably pretty annoying to get piped across the map. And the lock makes that easier. It enables Demo, who's already a class that doesn't thrive at range, but can definitely outdamage like a scout or a soldier at range. have just like a seemingly random, just high damage projectile at much further range, which allows demos to play more baity and whatnot. I do think that, and this was actually an idea I had for like today or yesterday for a video I intend to make about the fact that the lock itself isn't so much broken as it is just pipes in general, because the no damage fall off and being able to hit someone
It's
across the
insane.
map for
Yeah.
100 is just so fight defining and fight changing that just one pipe, like a wayward pipe on the med, which is going to happen at some point, like no matter how good you are of a med, no matter how much you're paying attention, like you're gonna get hit with a pipe at some point over your career, probably multiple times throughout a season. And that can just straight up lose a fight. Or if it's an inopportune time, then you might just be dying for that. So I understand it being annoying to play against and unsatisfying. Kind of seems like there's some momentum this time around. There was a previous wave a couple seasons ago about banning it, but this time around, I think people might be a little more serious about it. It's definitely more common in invite than it was back then. So it might be on the chopping block.
Yeah. Well, just to clarify, for people who don't follow both Highlander and Sixes, it is banned in North American Highlander as of right now, and this would have been almost a year ago. I want to say that it got banned in HL, but not in Sixes. And I think the weapons issues are like exacerbated in Highlander just because of the nature of the game mode, like with the ever-present sniper and the fact that there are more players crammed into similar sized maps. So, you play both Viaduct or Product in Sixes and in Highlander. Well, 6 players versus 9 players, the map is the same size. There's just going to be more congestion. And so, because Sniper completely makes people want to cower and hide, combine that with like incredibly fast projectiles that are near impossible to react to at mid range, and you get a weapon that is kind of unfun to play against. And at least in Highlander, it started it started with like one player in invite who was using it, and then it kind of just trickled down to the rest of the divisions really quickly, because you were basically throwing, if you weren't using Loch-n-Load on attack on Payload, because you just kill sentries way quicker. Swiftwater second, for example, the default sentry spot, you can't spam it out as a demo man, but you can with the Loch-n-Load, so you're basically throwing if you weren't using it in Payload. And so from my perspective of playing demo man, I disliked using it when compared to like Stock or Iron Bomber, because I just find Stock and Iron Bomber to be more fun. To me, it's less satisfying to hit a Loch-n-Load pipe than it is to hit like any other pipe, really. And I felt like I had to use it, and I also hated playing against it. And so kind of what I think Rumpus was hinting at was the pipes are easier to hit. And like, in my opinion, like direct hit grenades are really, really strong. Obviously, like they have no damage fall off.
Yeah.
They can 2-shot most classes, even with a buff. You can 2-shot a scout if he's not actively getting healed. And that's fine with Stock and Iron Bomber, because it takes a lot of skill to actually hit directs at a long range. And there's also counterplay, like you can move out of the way. But the range in which it's possible to react to a pipe and move out of the way is increased with the Loch-n-Load and its faster projectile. So to me, like, you have a class that's already much stronger than most of the other classes at a long range, and you just give an already extremely strong class even more ability, and it's just a recipe for not having very much fun. And that's my take on the weapon. And I guess just a brief aside, because I know that there will be, I suspect that people will use this argument. Well, what about the direct hit? Well, the direct hit is fine because Soldier doesn't have a sticky bomb launcher. Like, he's already got an overpowered weapon in his secondary slot. Like, he doesn't need to have a free long range damage machine in the primary slot, in my opinion. So
yeah, well, also like the ranged spam of Soldier is probably worse with DH. Well, it's give or take, because like losing splash is like actually a downside. Obviously, the lock has downsides and like no rollers, but the fact that you're not expecting better range just because like rockets have fall off, so like the damage difference is kind of mitigated to some extent.
Yeah, and well, in a way, I would argue that the reduced splash on the Loch-n-Load in particular is actually an upside, because if you're 1v1ing like a scout or a soldier, like one of the reasons people really like the Iron Bomber, or at least one of the reasons I really like the Iron Bomber, is because I can pipe somebody at a close range and not take any damage because of the reduced splash. So obviously, like you're losing crowd control with the Loch-n-Load, and you're missing out on rollers, and you're losing one projectile. But the trade-off is that you're just way more consistently able to hit directs with it at more long ranges as well. And you already have 13 projectiles still.
Yeah.
Or no, 11. Wait, 11 projectiles still. So you're only losing like 7% of your clip. And rollers are nice, but it's really not that big of a deal. And the AoE is really not that big of a deal, in my opinion, either. So I feel like you're getting a huge amount of upside for very little downside when you actually consider the context of the weapon.
Yeah, I think the times where I'm like really missing having rollers is particularly like holding chokes, just because you can kind of just no brain kind of spam pipes in the choke when players are trying to pressure it. I'm like, the example I'm thinking in my brain is like process second holding when the other team has mid. And rollers are just really nice there in a way that you kind of miss on the lock. But I mean, holding a choke is like something you still can do pretty adequately just with your stickies. So there's some overlap there in your capabilities, whereas on, for example, a mid fight or some like team fight where being able to hit just a cross map pipe will just win your team the fight straight up. Yeah, that's something like that's an upside that stickies, you can spam sticks and like get a couple single deaths for comparable damage, but like the effort there is like, yeah, the lock is definitely carrying those moments more so than you're giving up in the roller department.
Well, and stickies also have damage fall off, so you're not gonna get two shot by them. So
Yeah.
For me, I find it interesting because you had mentioned like Swiftwater second there for
yep.
taking out the gun, which is funny because like you can see like the 6 head video and like the actual distances that are calculated for, and I didn't realize that how hair tight that is, because I know like the range of the lock is not that much more than this like the actual stock grenades or the iron bomber for that matter. It just looks like it is. The actual difference, I think, was only like a few percentage points. So that means that sentry is just razorly thin outside of the grenade launcher's range, which is crazy.
So for the record, just for context, when I'm talking about on Swiftwater second, you can still spam the gun like with Iron Bomber, but you have to be way further forward. And you're just gonna die. Like if you're playing like advanced or invite or like honestly even like intermediate or main, like you're gonna be playing against a sniper who can like hit shots, which the majority of pub snipers can't do that. So you really just can't spam the gun without the lock on Swiftwater second. But I mean, I think that whole map is kind of just it gets a thumbs down for me. So like you can probably hear it in my voice. I hate that. I hate second point. I hate it.
One thing for me, because as someone who does not play demo competitively, I've only been on the receiving end of pipes. It felt like for me, like again, I'm not an invite player or anything like that. So like having been hit by the lock and pipes in sixes and in Highlander, to be honest, most of the time, again, as a soldier player, I think it's for me, it doesn't really feel like a difference. Like I would have been hit by a pipe either way. Just in my anecdotal experience, and I think that might just be because I'm more of a sixes player, and you know, as a soldier, you want to get in, you want to get close, and at that range, you're going to get hit by stock pipes anyway. So like the difference there doesn't really matter. And one thing that I had thought about, because I've seen people get like piped by the Loch-n-Load, and you know, they say that it's like places that they're not used to. But the thing is they would have been piped there anyway if they were, you know, getting shot at by like the iron bomber or grenade launcher or whatever. I think it makes me wonder if having having no rollers, having them like explode on the contact to the ground is actually like a secret upside, because people don't know where the demo is shooting, like the enemy demo man is shooting. Like since they explode on contact, like if they don't see that, like they don't see it fizzle on the ground, especially if they have like a low config HUD or whatever. Like they don't know that the demo man is shooting at them until they've already been hit with the lock. And it does make me wonder if that's like contributing, if that makes sense. Like they're not able to position well because of the lack of the roller there, if that makes any sense.
I think the Loch-n-Load, the pipe is harder to see. Like I think it's a little bit smaller, right, than like the Iron Bomber in stock.
It does come out in a fixed way as well. It doesn't like roll forward.
Yeah,
So
well,
I
I
think
think the
that
arc is different. The arc is definitely like more shallow on the Loch-n-Load,
yeah.
which is what I think people are referring to when they're saying that they get hit with spam with it, because you you can arc them like differently, like on maps like Prut was like one of the offenders. That map was ridiculous. A Highlander Koth map. I would literally get hit by like, you couldn't see it coming because it was kind of like Lakeside where the point is like there's two ramps on either side up to the point, and you could shoot pipes over that, and you couldn't even see the demo who was shooting them, but you'd be getting hit with like a 100-mile-per-hour football that you can't move out of the way. So I don't think it has anything to do with the rollers in my experience.
Yeah. I don't know. Again, I'm not a demo player. I'm just on the receiving end. But maybe it's just because I'm more of an aggressive player. I'll just like try to kill the demo as fast as possible and just get fucking owned, no matter whoever is who like whatever item
Yeah,
people are
well,
using. So that might be
I
part of
mean,
it.
there's definitely, like, we've gone over obviously like arguments about what it does to the metagame, but there's inarguably gonna be an element of cope. And this reminds me actually of when people found out that the Iron Bomber had a bigger hitbox than stock. Suddenly every scout main that had a death that like maybe they thought they were gonna live just started coping out about it being the Iron
Yes.
Bomber.
Yep.
And then it got
Yes.
fixed and
Yeah.
then no one even noticed anything. So I do think there's gonna be like an inherent confirmation bias of like, oh, of course this guy like hits, like I've seen scouts just get like completely rolled in mid range and then just like blame the
Yeah.
lock. It's
Yeah.
like I don't know about that.
Yeah.
I'll be the first. I'll
Exactly.
be the first to admit that sometimes it is cope, because I've definitely done that. But there are other times when I'm like I'll clip it because I'm obviously I'm a YouTuber, so like I have OBS open all the time because I'm like a goblin, always looking for clips, and I'll rewatch it. And sometimes like when I get upset at something, like I'll be like, oh, I got hit reg there. I'll go back and look, and it's like, no, I'm just coping. But other times it is absolutely complete BS, like with the Loch-n-Load, in my opinion, where it was like, well, I think that for me it boils down to just you increase your effective range with pipes. Where like what QueeQuey was saying, where if you're really close to a demo, the pipe is essentially like you can't really dodge it, right? It's like basically hit scan if you're point blank, and like at that range, the lock and stock or Iron Bomber are going to be the same, because the difference in travel time is negligible. But
I think that also deals into like the difference of why like in Highlander it mattered a lot more than in sixes, just because in sixes I mean, generally when you're doing a push, you want to get right into them immediately, whereas like in Highlander, like, you know, even if there's an Uber exchange, like let's take I don't know, Vigil third, whatever. Because you know, like the demo, they got that hill, the sentry's gonna be up there, et cetera, et cetera. Like even there, if there's an exchange coming in from Cliff, you know that the engineer and the scout, maybe the scout, are gonna be pushing the cart, trying to get like the cart up the hill or whatever. And so in that moment, like, they are still like farther away from you in comparison to like the enemy combo. Like players in general in Highlander, also given the nature of there being more players, there's going to be more players that are going to be farther away from you in comparison to sixes, where, generally speaking, like, I mean, unless there's an Uber exchange and your flank is like kind of waiting that out, for like the post Uber call, to like bomb in or whatever. I think it's more of like you are going to have a higher percentage or whatever you want to call that player, a number or a higher number of players that are going to be farther away from you in Highlander in comparison to sixes. Same thing for like holding chokes or whatever. When you're holding a point, like in like steel, like if it's attack defend or if it's payload, naturally you don't want to be, you might hold the chokes or whatever, but you don't need to be like, you're not going to be right up on them like you would in sixes. And I think that also probably plays into it a little bit. So as to where like why Highlander kind of felt the range distance a little bit more, or the speed at the effective range, I guess I should say, a bit quicker than in sixes. But yeah, I feel it kind of comes into one thing that I will be working on for RGL this hopefully it'll be done in December, but I have to learn two or three coding languages. But I'm graduating, getting my bachelor's finally in December, and I am an old man. Um, so I'm building I'll keep it relatively vague. But basically, the idea is that one part of it would be able to mathematically see what the differences actually are. So, like the idea, like
Hmm.
imagine if you hit someone with a pipe or whatever, and with a lock and load. And you're like, okay, well, we know what the maximum range of the lock and load is or what percentage it gains or whatever. But if you know that it's within a certain amount of hammer units, it would hit anyway, if it was the
Right.
grenade launcher. So like we in using um the tools that we will have for servers, we should be able to parse that and actually figure that out and see what percentage of that actually is just, just as cope, or maybe they're just not used to that, or they haven't played with a demo man that's good with the lock yet, or anything like that, or any other item. I don't think that, I mean, if I mean, it'll be hopefully done in December. We'll see, but I'm very new on starting. Maybe it'll come out next year. I don't know, whatever. But it's something I'm passionate about, so hopefully we'll see how that continues.
Mhm.
Um, but I think that's going to help a lot. One part of me wants it to be like available on like community servers or whatever, just so I can get data on like how much does the like the vaccinator actually carry you. You know what I mean? I think that would be a good thing
Right.
to like show pubbers that the vaccinator is actually super overpowered. Because you can take the damage negation from any item, whether it's like the battalions or whatever, or the fist of steel. And then so you could see like how much an Uber negates. So like if you get hit by a pipe and you're Ubered, obviously you just negated 100 damage. But you could see the difference between like how much damage the vaccinator negates and then how much an Uber negates, or like a stock medigun negates. And I'm willing to bet that the vaccinator would negate significantly more with a good competent medic in comparison to like the stock medigun in pubs, for example.
Yeah.
Um, so that is something I'm working on. I need to learn Go and React and do a bit of like networking and server work. But I'm learning networking next semester, so we'll see how things go. Um, but yeah, that's something I'm excited about. But I'm interested to see how the conversation will go before then, or even if that matters. I'm hoping that it will help people like kind of optimize how they play TF2 in a way. Like be like, oh, actually, if you push last with the pain train, you win 37% more of the time. Let's start doing that more. You know what I don't know.
Yo, shout out to the pain train. I love the pain train. I
Me
think
too.
people should.
It's so
I
good.
think. I think at the very least there should be more experimentation. Because I feel like I don't want to reiterate what we said before, but I think in a perfect world where people had way more time to just like obsess over this game, I think you would see people switching to that item more often, especially on a map like like Gully Wash or
Really watch.
something.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
I think the
and
other
they,
thing.
I was casting an advanced match last night, and on Gully, they just scored a round straight up by um, having a pain trained soldier and a scout just stand on the point.
Mhm. Yeah. The other thing as well is I've had this conversation before, like as it's difficult to talk about like in the like as a sixes admin, the because like sixes can play very differently at different levels. And so previously, like and the other thing as well is, generally speaking, we have like admin different, like the division that they're not in, if that makes sense. Just to avoid bias and whatever. So like we have like Plinko and invite, because he's not invite. Also Plinko's just awesome. But like then, because you wouldn't want someone making a decision on something that in like directly makes their team, like affects their team, or like maybe puts their team in a better situation or whatever. Sometimes it's unavoidable to have that happen, but it's we try to avoid it. But one thing that I always thought was funny was people would talk about people who would be like main admins or IM admins like me. um they would talk to like we talked with the invite player, like the invite admins, or like the people who are playing an invite. And it was funny to see some of them be like, dude, main players do not play the same TF2 as invite players, because like one strategy that was, I'm trying to remember what season it was. It might have been 12 or something like that, or 11. I don't remember. But one strategy that was just starting to become dominant in, I think it was main, was people pushing last on Gully Wash with flog. So like it would stalemate out. So they would just die, come up scorch shot, build up the flog, and they would just take an Uber exchange with the flog pyro. And they were just like, we would never ever see this in invite, but now like this is a thing at the mid levels, and I just think that's hilarious. Um, but I mean, I don't know. But I guess that kind of go ahead.
Oh, I didn't have anything. No.
Oh,
My
I thought
mic
I was
might have
cutting
just
you
been
off.
picking up random crap.
So I guess that there's a few ways we can kind of go in here. But I guess the first question would be like, do you guys have any thoughts on like the less popular formats? You know, we've got fours, Ultiduo, and like Passtime,
Mhm.
and Prolander, I guess, which basically doesn't exist anymore. Did you guys have any thoughts on those at all?
Yes. So Prolander I played, I wasn't a fan of. I just don't like any full-time sniper game mode, I think, just categorically.
Yeah.
Um, Fours, I did actually play a little bit when I was like really, really new to competitive, and it was pretty fun. I think overall it's probably at like an appropriate popularity. Um, and actually, I know some friends of mine back when they ran pugs more often. If they couldn't get enough for a sixes pug, then they would just play a fours pug. And yeah, it's I think pretty fun. Not really like competing for main format or anything, but definitely has its place.
Yeah.
As far as ulti is concerned, this I did play a lot actually when I first was playing like around season 6, just because my teammates really liked it.
Yeah.
Um, I like and dislike Ultiduo. It's fun. It's like a chill game mode, but uh it's really, really sucks to lose in, I
Yeah.
think. Um
Yeah.
and it's also like it's more fun when you're not playing with Ubers, I find, when you're just playing with like the heals you have, the buffs and the bows and whatnot.
Hmm.
It's a little less steamrolly, but yeah. And then Pastime I think is just goated. I don't really like playing it
I
myself, but
agree.
full respect to Pastime.
I 100% agree. I remember when I was in Austria, at the time I was like technically a sub or whatever for Solar Light's demo night team that he made the video on. I never played with them, so like I was just there to brainstorm and then to hang out, I guess, basically. Like preseason. And they ended up playing Pastime, and it looked so fun. It made me feel way worse at Soldier as well, just because of like the rocket jumping ability of all the players, or like how they're
Yeah.
surfing off of everything and whatever. I'm like, dude, I'm so dog shit. Like, oh my god. And I always like ulti duo. Like Broccoli used to be, I don't know if you still are, but was it like an ulti duo demon? So
Oh,
like
fiend.
I liked playing it a little bit, but not that much.
Well, I like
Fours, I
winning.
think
I
it
like
was
winning in Ultiduo, or I like Ultiduo games that are close. But when your team is just worse, then that fucking sucks. I'm excuse my French, but that's like not very fun. Like if you're just stuck in spawn, then it's bad. It's like
yeah,
you need to have very, very similar in skill players for Ultiduos to be fun for all parties who are participating,
yeah,
in my opinion. Because in that case, then that's probably like the most fun I've had playing Medic, honestly, is in
Yeah.
duos, because you actually have so much more impact over the game than even in
like
fours or
immediately.
sixes.
Yeah, I mean you can like carry your
Oh
soldier.
yeah.
Yeah, I think that's
That actually reminds me of another thing I didn't like about Ultiduo is it's just really annoying to try and kill a 300 HP soldier that's getting like giga tanked.
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh, the fights are like straight out of Dragon Ball sometimes, when you're both getting arrow tanked and you're like, is this guy ever gonna die? So I think I liked what you mentioned, Rumpus, about the Ubers, because I do think if you are really, really smart in ulti duos, then you can actually just milk like 2 minutes of point time out of like one single Uber, because it's so hard to kill a 300 health soldier. And if you have the point, you can just keep contesting. Then when you have to, pop the Uber, and then you basically reset fully with the Uber, because they're going to also exchange, and you grab ammo, and it can be a pretty slow and tedious game mode, I think, if it's not back and forth.
I think that's the other thing for me, like with Pastime, that is cool, is that it is very, very, very much like an offensive game mode. So like, I mean, even when like the teams are imbalanced or whatever, it's like maybe one team, like the teams definitely play defense. Don't get me wrong, but it's just like it's a lot of the times it's just basic, like from like the frag movies or whatever you want to call them, like the scoring montages for Passtime. I see people. It's just like even like if you're like really beating the other team, what you're really doing is you're just literally dunking on them. Like you're not like killing them over and over. You're literally dunking on the enemy team. Like you're just destroying them via getting points rather than frags,
And
which I think
at
plays a
least they
lot
get to
into
go
it.
for air shots when they're losing. You know.
Yeah. Um. But yeah.
Yeah, it's
Um.
been cool seeing Pastime kind of pop off a bit.
Yeah, I agree.
Because I pugged it a bit like way back when, um, and didn't really enjoy it that much. I feel like if I had a soldier season under my belt and actually commit to like learning how to jump on soldier, then I'd enjoy it more. But yeah, I'm happy to just be a bystander and see people enjoying it because it is like really well. I am obviously like a competitive player first, but I'd consider myself like a jumper second, despite not being good at it. I just like really enjoy jump as like a thing. I think it's like extremely core to TF2, and I just have a lot of respect for it. So seeing a game mode that ties in movement tech even more closely than sixes is definitely cool.
Hmm. I don't know if this really counts like as a player, but like I feel like for me, like I mean, I haven't played in a while, like or on and off or whatever, and so I feel like I've always like I've never wanted to be like invite, for example, or anything like that. I've always been more interested in like the scene in general. I'm a like if you want to call it that, like I'm a content creator, like player first before anything else. I guess. But after that, I think it would probably be like after that, I love more competitive, and then after that, I'm just like a pubber. Maybe jumping is under that. I mean, I'm not great at jumping, so that probably doesn't help. Um,
Yeah, I think
but yeah,
in general, the competitive community places probably too much value on someone's div in the sense that like obviously when it comes to like discussion about balance and things like that, like someone might have different insight if they are a better player than someone who's just like,
just
you know,
starting.
not as good. But I do think that a lot of like social value gets placed on, and there's a lot of expectations that someone playing TF2 competitively is doing so to get to invite, which really I don't think is the case for honestly most people.
I yeah.
I think there's a lot
I
of really valuable ways to contribute without being just a grinder.
Exactly. I think one part of it is that there are a lot of people who just want to be the best, and I think that's great. And there should be people like that. Admire those people. Like I remember our first season. We started out with VO and Frisbee in our division, and they were nice to us. They were great. They fucking destroyed us. But they're an invite now, and so I think that's cool. Or they were. I guess they've kind of semi-retired. Um, but for me, it was like it is cool to get better, and I want to get better. I always want to improve. But I think the thing for me, and I think a lot of players feel this way, is I mean, this kind of comes into gaming in general for me. But I like competitive TF2. One because having competent teammates and whatever, it just makes TF2 more fun. But the other part of it as well is more of like just hanging out with friends, and a big
Yeah.
part of choosing your teammates, if you're a team leader, is choosing people that are not like lame, like they're cool. You can totally have a team. Like, I mean, I remember when we played IM, there was a team that like cut and like picked up like 12 or 13 people over the course of the season because they were just cutting people who are their worst player and picking up someone who's better over and over and over and over again. And that, I mean, that's fine. I guess you can do that. But I heard that team was extremely toxic because they were just picking up, whatever. And I mean, and if that's your team mentality, then go for it. But like, I have always had, like, for the most part, I've always picked team. I would rather have a teammate that's worse, but is fun and like a good person or nice and whatever, than have like a god tier player that is just an asshole. I mean, it's one of the reasons why one of the rules on Xylophone, the team that I've had. One of the main rules that we have for like picking up new players is they can't be a League of Legends player. That's one of the barriers you have to can't play League. And so the main reason actually for that is because we've had a tryout and a player like bait scrims. Like we've had tryouts, bait scrims two or three times because they were playing League, not even in a ranked match for those who are listening and are League players. So like it's like, dude, you're not even playing ranked. Just get out and join our scrim. Like you're literally trying out, which I guess them trying to bait because of League already kind of puts a bad taste in their mouth and probably wouldn't have picked them up anyway. But regardless, so it's just one of those things where like trying to like avoid that, have good teammates, have good friends. You just want to hang out basically
Yeah.
and have that community. And I think that is a big part of just gaming in general. It doesn't have to be like the best of the best. I think it's cool. It's cool to watch. I think it's good to aspire to those players, especially if those people are nice, they're good. Whereas but everyone else, or a lot of people, like they want to get better, or like, but maybe you don't want to be the top, maybe you do want to be the top, you're just kind of working your way there, and you kind of have to figure out that sense of community. And I think we kind of see that more at LAN, like you can, rather than whereas like online you feel like everyone just wants to be the best, whereas at least when I was at LAN, you kind of had more of a sense of community and friendship while you were there. Personally, I don't know if
Like
you observed that.
pulled together teams just because people want to compete.
Yeah.
I do think that in general, like there's varying degrees of like grind versus just have fun that you can go for. But if you're actually interested in getting better as fast as possible, then I think that some of those like super grind team environments are actually like detrimental rather than good. Because I've seen like there are teams that will scrim 6 or 7 nights a week, and I feel like that is just worse. Like they don't, I don't know, maybe it's something about there's teams with players who, well, they just go about it the wrong way. Rather than actually like try to get better, they think just getting more time is going to help them. And this is more so at like a higher level, like your advanced or your invite. Because if you're actually like new to sixes, then just getting reps, you're just gonna like pick up on things really quickly.
100%. 100%.
But yeah, it's like teams will be just nonstop reviewing and nonstop playing and like just singularly focused and not actually getting better and not changing their approach in any way. Which yeah,
Yeah.
I've seen many a team like just so dedicated to trying to be like the best kind of sputter out because they go about it the wrong way.
Yeah.
Well, I think a lot of
I
those
think a big
teams also, when they review, aren't actually being very productive with the reviews, and they're instead
Yeah.
like playing the blame game and like not looking at the bigger picture. Because
yes.
that's what I've experienced, at least in Highlander, giving teams reviews where they'll be like just hyper fixated on like the little details, and I'm like, guys,
Yeah.
it doesn't pay to like obsess and like try to play the blame game or be like, oh, our engineer needed to like, no, focus on like do a review, focus on like the things that are causing you to lose rounds or lose halves, fix those things, and then reiterate instead of like trying to to reinvent the wheel and like, because I know players who are just, they have to have like this elaborate plan for how to push like
Yeah.
vigil second on, like that's not how it works. Like you need to, like you can
Play it as
do
you
the
go.
meta, but you can't like always do the exact same thing every time. It's not going to happen in this game mode. It's not possible. Like
Yeah.
people make mistakes. You have to adapt.
I think the other thing as well there, like I have mentored two teams now for like engineer and sixes, and because that's the only thing I guess I'm really qualified on to speak on anymore. I guess technically maybe a little bit of soldier for people who are in like newcomer or whatever. But the one thing I've tried to talk about as a team leader or like when doing demo reviews is being like, if someone makes a mistake, like, and or like they make a mistake repeatedly, like you can point out that they made the mistake. Oh, be like, oh, you were in the wrong spot, or oh, you should have denied that player, or whatever. And say maybe they make this mistake a few times. I feel like in a lot of these teams, they will be like every time they see that mistake, they want to like point it out and being like whatever. And I'm like, no, that the say the soldier who makes this mistake knows that they made that mistake. They cringe every time that they see it. You don't need to rub salt in the wound. They already know that they fucked up. They already know that this is wrong. I mean, it's the same thing for like Highlander or whatever. Like if your sniper is in the wrong position or, whatever, like you don't need to harp on that. You can kind of point it out and be like, especially if it's like a snowballing issue. Whereas like say the sniper's in the wrong spot and he gets backstabbed by a spy. And because of that, the other sniper is able to come in and now he holds this angle. Now because he's holding this angle, the medic is now in a more exposed position or whatever. I mean, this is something, I mean, anything similar can happen in sixes. And because of these like cascading effects of someone making a mistake, I think we need to focus on like, okay, well, that player did make a mistake and that led to other things or whatever, but this isn't solely on the fault of that one player. Like after the medic is now out of position or whatever, now that's also on the medic right there. Like we can talk about like, okay, well, no one's ever going to play perfect. No one, just period. Like you can crash out and do whatever you want, but even the best player is going to fuck up every once in a while. And so, or miss their shots. Like that's the big thing as well. Like if I watch a scout v scout and the scout I'm mentoring or whatever just eat shit, like the other scout is just better than them. What am I supposed to tell them? Like, oh, just win the DM. Like I think a big part of that is, kind of realizing where your team's strengths are and realizing like how to play around that. Be like, okay, well, when we play this team, like, we can try to grind the DM, but if we aren't winning, like if this is a problem or whatever, you can hit up the MGE or whatever and grind it out. But another part of it is being like, okay, we just can't win the DM against this scout or, whatever. And so like, how do we get around that? Do we have our roamer play with our flank scout more, or how do we, try to figure something out rather than trying to just put the blame on that player, putting all the responsibility on that one player? And yeah, sure, they do need to take some of the responsibility, but you're a team, you're one unit. You don't need to like solely divvy up the tasks. And I think a big part of toxic teams is kind of like expecting each individual player to put everything in their own hands rather than playing to like everyone's strengths on their own individual team, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think a lot of people try to overcomplicate things as well, because I think newer
Yeah.
players would be kind of surprised at least like the best teams I've been on. The reviews are probably not what they would expect, because a lot of the time it's just like trying to see what went wrong, and it's like, oh, here I thought that you were doing this. Okay, I thought we were doing this. Okay, well, I mean, either one works. Let's just do this next time. Okay. Or in this situation, I want you to do this instead. Okay, I'll do that instead. Or sometimes it is just straight up. I mean, the fight was good that we took. I would take it again. It just didn't work out, but unlucky. We'll just do the same thing next time.
Oh yeah. I think way more people would improve a lot quicker if they were to review like that, because I've know a lot of people, a lot of teams who are like what you guys have been describing, where it's they focus too much on the details. They literally just need to like get on the same page and they'll do so much better. But I guess talking of like, I mentioned visual and other things. What are your thoughts on other game modes being played in 6v6, like attack, defend, payload?
Mm-hmm.
I've heard talk, I think of, maybe I'm going crazy, so you can tell me if I'm wrong, but I thought I heard somebody mention that there was like a CP Steel like map that was developed for sixes at some point.
There was back in the day. CP Science got played, which was cool. I mean, I was a big fan of like looking back at some of those old defunct maps. But yeah, I mean, I don't think I would personally enjoy the asymmetrical game modes like Attack, Defender, Payload. But that isn't to say that I don't think it should happen if there's like actual interest. I know there's been, I mean, everyone reminisces about Gravel Pit, whether they actually
Yep.
played it or not. I never played Gravel Pit, so I don't really have a strong opinion. Something it'd be cool to see, I guess, but I'm not optimistic that the Sixes community is going to muster enough momentum for that to be something that gets tested next, compared to other things like the, I guess, newer 5CP maps for starters, and just like non-map whitelist stuff.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that the chances of any sort of payload or attack defend map getting into the rotation of sixes is less than like a 5% chance. I think it's extremely unlikely that that's ever going to happen, and I think a lot of that is for good reason. Personally, I mean, from a player's perspective, like if I'm playing, I'll be honest with you, I do not want to, like, if I were to play a season of sixes again, if I had the time, I wouldn't want to play Gravel Pit. There's a lot of maps that I would just much rather play, and it just seems so antiquated. But perhaps like it would I from but let me pivot from a spectator point of view. I think watching like invite teams play Gravel Pit in 2025 would be incredibly entertaining. So I think there's
Yeah.
a little bit of a dynamic there where most of the people who are probably calling for more experimentation are probably people who don't have to uh, spend the time grinding these maps out. Or I think you mentioned it on a video recently where when you do get a map that's new to the rotation, because invite is now pick ban in North America, it just doesn't get played a lot of the times because teams will just
Yeah.
immediately ban it.
That's true.
So you're actually like hurting your team's chances of success by grinding that map out because half of your opponents are just going to not play it.
I think that kind of brings into the question of there's two parts of it. Just for this minor like off section here, I think the question is, the problem with not having pick ban is like once you get to invite, when you are playing against, another team or whatever. In Highlander, you're kind of like set up to know like what team you're going to be playing against. It's round robin or whatever you want to call it. Like it's scheduled in when you get into Highlander invite, and you kind of have the same thing in sixes. But the thing is more of like when you get there in Highlander, you're like, okay, well, we're gonna play MCM or whatever on Steel or whatever. But the thing is in Highlander, there's gonna be certain teams, and in sixes, some teams are just gonna be better on whatever map. And I think a big part of that is kind of causes a little bit of it can cause an issue. Like for example, when Villa was new, I'll use that as an example. People did not want to play Villa against Froyo just because everyone knew that Froyo was like the best team at Villa, and so if you were scheduled in or whatever to play Villa against Froyo Tech, you were just gonna lose. And to be fair, at the time, they were still dominant number one, so like
Right.
you're probably gonna lose anyway. But the point is like there can be teams that are just dominant at some maps, and so like if you are the player, like the team that gets scheduled against Team X on the map, or like in Highlander, like Steel is like the notorious upset map. You want to be playing the number one team on Steel, or like the number two team or whatever team is better than you is the map that you want to, like the time you want to play against them on Steel. Whereas if you played against a team that's worse than you don't want to play against them on Steel. You want to play against them on Upward or whatever, anything along those lines. And I think that is like, I can understand that sentiment, but I think as a viewer, this kind of pulls into a few problems, namely with the rule set of like 5CP, but I'll get back to that in a minute. But I think that kind of it I think there was a few seasons ago where I edit all the VODs for RGL, and so the thing is that when you only see process snake water and sunshine for the entire season, every single VOD is one of these three maps, you're like, okay, maybe this is an issue. And I think
Yeah.
that leads to a few issues. One being just viewer retention is low. Like I can see this like as like on the YouTube analytics. I think, and that is a problem. And so like the question is do we move to the Highlander system where you're like, okay, you're playing this map on this day against this team? Like, do we do that? Is that how we build more practice on these new maps, et cetera, et cetera? I think that might be a solution, but what do you think, Rumpus?
Yeah. From my experience having played both weekly maps and pick ban, as a player, I 100% prefer playing pick ban, and not actually for the reason of being able to like lock in these maps I prefer for matches or whatnot, but just like the bulk of the time you're actually playing during a season is just scrims, and being able to not have to grind the exact same map like 3 times a night, or if you're playing 9:30, 10:30 scrims and 4 times a night, God forbid it's a Koth and you're playing however many per night over the course of the week, you just get sick of it, I've found. And being
100%.
able to actually scrim a diverse number of maps is really, really nice. I do
I
think that, yeah, you're right about teams just kind of going to the comfort puggy picks for matches most of the time. I think that a solution to that would be more so with like the pick ban system itself, or just the map pool itself, because there's really no reason that process or snakewater or even like my favorite map of sunshine has to be in the rotation every season.
I agree, and we've had this conversation before in like the Sixes staff, where it's just I know some people are like, okay, well, I'm not opposed to taking out Snakewater, for example, like it just to get. But I think the problem is that whenever a new map is introduced, it is I mean, in general, players are just not good at giving feedback to the maps. But I think a big part of that is that players in the invite players typically do not play the new maps. Maybe
Yeah.
before the map gets put in into the map pool. And invite and advanced players will not play it once it actually gets in the pool. So bulk of the feedback comes from newcomer through main because they have the set scheduled matches. And I think that is both detrimental to the mapper but also just to like the player base because I think the thing is once you get to that level, like when we come to like getting the surveys and giving feedback, because a lot of I would say the vast majority of changes that are done for RGL is based on the postseason survey. So if you're watching and you want to have impact on the league, just do the postseason survey. Not that many people actually vote in them, and yes, surveys actually do matter a ton, like way more than you think. Um, Anyway, but I think the problem is that, like, because people don't scrim the map or whatever, by the time you get into the match, like, it's difficult for new maps to kind of break into the map pool, especially, like, as a staple map and because players just won't practice it. And I understand like having the issue of needing to like in Highlander, for example, like my team was just talking about like, oh, I am sick of scrimming Swiftwater. I'm sick of scrimming Steel or whatever. We've done it 9 times in the last 2 days. Like I want to play another map. And to be honest, one part of me has kind of wondered if we should move to more of like the EU system where you play 2 maps or anything along those lines, rather than just dealing with 1 map per match, if that makes sense. But they also don't have like the infinite overtime or anything like that.
Yeah.
You're playing 2 maps, each one are 30 minutes. Whoever gets the most points wins. And so I think that is a question there. So like maybe this week, you're playing Snake process for 1A, and then 1B you're playing Metalwork, Scully Wash, whatever. You get my point. And so that way you're playing 4 maps a week. And the question is that better? Is that worse? I don't know. So yeah.
Yeah, I think to some extent the issue with the maps and the diversity of maps is just that people are comfortable on what they're on, so they're
Yeah.
gonna want to play that when it matters. So a lot of the time, like honestly, I wouldn't mind it if RGL just stepped in and said, "Hey, this is the map pool this season. You can deal with it." And then whatever people don't like those maps can cry about it, and they'll still play it because they're still
Yeah.
going to play TF2. And then maybe
Yeah.
they'll find that they like it, but at the very least, you're going to have like more diverse maps.
Yeah, I think I'm more in the favor of that. But to go back really quick, before I talk about I guess 5CP for a minute, I think that or here, I will start. I'll start with 5CP just because this leads into my other conversation, which is that now that you've been at LAN and you have been in the back end, as a caster and whatever, I assume you now know the feeling of things going over time and how things are like scheduling conflicts as things go on. And you're like, okay, now this team is now 30 minutes, 40 minutes, an hour over time. And my hot take right now is while I think it was good temporarily, I do not think the infinite overtime has helped alleviate the issues that we have with 5CP in sixes. And I think now that people have kind of gotten used to it, it kind of makes it worse in some ways, where people will rather. It is a lot of the time it is more strategically viable to play out the clock and sit on last for 3 minutes because you're going to get second immediately, no matter what. And then if you're at an even situations, there's very little to lose to playing out the clock because you only have to wait 2 minutes or 3 minutes or however long you're on last to be able to reset the mid. And I mean, now that we've seen like people complaining about the infinite overtime because matches can go on for over an hour now rather than a half normally being 30 minutes. I can't believe I'm saying it, but I feel like the Euros might have a better solution here, to be
I
honest.
actually basically wholly disagree because, well, for starters, you are right about it poses a challenge for scheduling stuff, which was an issue at Denver, going definitely behind on time. RGL land though was actually like very on schedule, and
That's
afforded
because
plenty of time.
I can tell you in the back end, the RGL
Yeah, you
over
have to like
through
take it.
experience, we know to pad the time very much, because the talk of infinite overtime, like the amount of times we have talked about infinite overtime in like the Sixes staff is crazy. Or at least it was, I guess I should say. So like we know to pad the off time to be able to accommodate for that, because when a match goes for an hour and a half, like what the fuck are you supposed to do? Like, we have to let it happen, or else one team just definitively loses when they wouldn't have, or whatever. So go ahead. I'll let you finish.
Yeah, and I think that from a actual gameplay perspective, it's not even particularly close. And I understand how this looks, having just seen what was a pretty slow and pretty stalematey invite playoffs, in particular because of Mama's Boys just not really doing anything to push out. But those come with disadvantages for sure, because if you're letting the other team just try to pick apart your hold for the full duration, then, and you're not reciprocating in any fashion, then like long term, you're probably going to lose that. Of course, you get to go fight the mid after 4 minutes if things reset.
Yeah.
But I think for anyone complaining about the 5 CP, well, infinite overtime is, well, I guess they kind of play hand in hand. But if you are complaining about a team stalemating on their own last, then it's you creating the stalemate. And I don't think people really realize this, because you have told yourself that you can only double sack, or you can only play this sniper, or you can only do these safe options where you don't give up two to try and get the force until, oh, wait, there's 45 seconds left. We have to take the exchange. The exchange like never works as well, but teams still go for it because they don't have time for anything else at that point.
Of course.
And then they reset. And it's like, this was something that was really, really frustrating me. Invite grands, and also watching my friends play last night. I casted them really long match, and they were having some issues into Metalworks last, tried to play the sniper, and like the second that my friend Dan would spawn on sniper with a minute 30 left, I'm saying like, okay, see you guys for the reset, because I can just tell like it's gonna happen. And then they went for a 4-man when there was like 10 seconds left, and just immediately, but couldn't capitalize. And it's like, I don't think people realize that the stalemate really, really sucks when you're stuck on last and the other team is doing that to you, where they're just playing so safe for no reason. But if you're in the driver's seat, if your problem is breaking last, that in my brain is kind of a fictional stalemate, because you can just get more aggressive, get more creative, pull out banners, pull out man treads, sack more players, and it immediately stops.
I do agree to a point. I do think teams should be using banner a lot more. Battalions is really good, and I think that's a whole different conversation, because I think it is very much of a better pushing tool than a defending tool. But that's a different conversation, because most players don't understand how it actually works, because it's off of like base damage. But anyway, I think that's a part of it. If the other team is stalemating, you have options. I think the problem is like, I mean, I know a lot of players don't care about this at all. In the mid level, especially, to lower level, maybe people care more in the higher level. But as a viewer, it just sucks so bad to watch. If you're just watching a team stale, like I complained about this in like my engineer in sixes video, and I've got comments like basically like agreeing with me from pubbers, and like if the pubbers can recognize it, like like at the time I was complaining about like the EU being very slow, and at the time the I-69, where if you go back and watch I-69, like grand finals for example, Witness Gaming at the time, which great now, but at the time it was honestly embarrassing. Like if you asked a pubber to watch I-69 at the time, I was embarrassed to ask people, be like, oh yeah, there's this big, intercontinental LAN. Whereas like I'm sitting here and like Froyotech is sacking in 4 players, and they won't, like Witness Gaming at the time would not push out. I'm like, dude, you're literally up 6-2. Push out, please. And I think the thing is like it, like as a viewer, like it, whether it is like the best decision or not or whatever, like you can make the most aggressive decisions, but if the defending team just chooses not to push out, then there's nothing you can do, and vice versa. If you're the defending team and the other team just isn't getting aggressive, like you can push the blame onto whoever you want. It's just the only, like, as a team, like you can make the strategic decision, but the person who it hurts the most is the viewers and the casters. You're just sitting here bored out of your mind waiting for something to happen. And I don't know. I'm sure there are players who don't really care about that more cared about, like, playing and whatever. But for me, I think watching is a important part of any esport, whether no matter how big or small or whatever. But any successful grassroots esport has a very good viewership, like being able to be constantly engaged. And as a sixes player, don't get me wrong, I know inherently, as someone who prefers sixes over whatever, I am more engaged than the vast majority of people who can watch sixes. Like there's like if you watch attack defend or any stopwatch based game mode, like one, you inherently understand what's going on, but because of just pubbers play more stopwatch based game modes. But the other thing as well is more of that, if you are stalemating as the defending team, you are winning. You are actively winning when you are stalemating. Like if you are wasting the blue team's time, you are making the right choices to win. Whereas in 5CP, that may or may not be the choice, like the correct choice. Stalemating on last, you're playing for the reset. Technically, that is a winning choice, but it is not as immediately visible, if that makes sense. And I think
Yeah.
that is a problem for viewers and etc. Personally, I think, I mean, it's very easy to just be like, as someone who's not a mapper, to say, oh, it's just a map problem. I personally just think that last should be the hardest point to defend on any map.
Mm.
I think resups play a lot into that. Maybe this is my, my conspiracy theory. But I think being able to resup so easily is one of the largest problems on defending last. It makes the specialists even stronger. Maybe not in the way that you think. Like it doesn't make engineer, like I think, like for example, I'll use engineer because I played engineer. Um, I think it makes engineer even stronger on last or like heavy, because if you're engineer, you should have an engineer on every 5CP last hold. Don't get me wrong. But when you are playing engineer on a standard team, like you're not like me where you're resupping onto minis when you like your gun goes down or whatever. You stand there, you repair the gun, but if the gun goes down, congratulations, you just resup onto scout. And now because you have wasted basically no time, yeah, you don't have as much of a positional advantage, but the thing is that you being able to make that choice, there's no reason not to do so. There's no strategic choice to choose to not play engineer on last or heavy on last or anything like that. There is no downside, because, or very little of a downside, because you can always either literally resup. If you're like a soldier or whatever, you jump in, jump out to resupply, or the changing class. And I think that is a big part of it. Like I liked stock granary, where there's that I talked about in the vestibule, like the vestibule, which for the people who watched the previous video and every single person who commented, what is a vestibule? It's just a point. It's like a room between rooms. Like if you go into like a store, like Target, Walmart, whatever, Aldi, like as soon as you walk in, they'll have that like air that comes down to keep like the bugs from getting in. That is a vestibule. Like I want a room or whatever, like enough space to where resupping is a choice. You need to make the conscious decision and be like, okay, I'm going to bait my team for 10, 15 seconds, whatever, to be able to go resup. Whereas right now, like we play Granary Pro, which there's no downside to resupping. Like Snakewater is a great example. Like you can sit on, wherever you're at, jump back, like as a soldier, jump back to the respawn as soon as you force the enemy team, and then just resup and come out the other spawn door. And I think because of that, it just makes last holds really good. I don't think a vestibule is like the best option or whatever. I think it's just one of them. I know people joke when I say it, people joke, be like, oh, well, that's basically just 7 CP. And I'm like, okay, no, but like you're just it would be like trying to defend. Like, I'm not saying it needs to be that far back, but I think just nerfing last holds in general through map design is more of the actual answer, rather than, I think the infinite overtime, while I think it helped at the time, I think it was a band-aid solution for like what needs to actually happen, which I personally think is just defending last should suck. You should not ever want to be on last. Like if you're up say it's like a 4v3, the right choice should always be to move to second. Like, you should be like, okay, well, we're on last, but defending last is hard here, so we're going to try to go and take second regardless, because we have a better shot at defending second than we do defending last, if that makes sense.
Okay, I have a bunch of thoughts because you went over a
Yes,
bunch of
thank you.
stuff.
Yeah,
So
yeah, sorry.
I agree with the kind of the vestibule idea. I think that because I think just resupply binds in general, it's like very unsatisfying for someone to teleport away from what
Yeah.
would be a kill.
Yeah.
So I think it would be beneficial in that sense. And there is a TFTV thread right now actually that includes that as a suggestion for some
Oh, no
5
way.
CP quality of life fixes. But I do think when it comes to teams not pushing out of last when they can probably do so and just playing the reset has way more to do with the round timer than it does with the infinite overtime. Because like the only time that a team really like feels incentivized to be pushing when they're on the back foot
I
like that are when they're like behind rounds, I suppose.
Yes. Yes.
And I think that the reason you see more of those kind of resetty situations
I'm
in the overtime is because you just see more gameplay in the overtime because it's just
I
more
misspoke.
TF2.
I meant the round timer.
Okay, sure.
It's just that in infinite overtime, you are going to see the round timer played out a lot more. Was the thing. I just think that
Yeah.
what I'm saying is that I think that was a band-aid solution because of reducing the round timer is a good and a bad thing. Depending on where you're coming from. But I think the thing is like it is a shorter amount of time to play out the round timer now than it used to be. And don't get me wrong, the 10-minute stalemate sucked and it was
Yeah,
terrible.
it was horrible.
But I am saying that if you are defending last and you have 4 minutes, it's a 4-minute round timer right now,
Yep.
right? Because I know some places play. Is it Australia that plays with 3 minutes? Uh,
I
either way,
haven't heard of shorter than 4, but
um,
maybe.
yeah, either way. So it's a 4-minute round timer. But if you've been stalemating for 2 minutes and you're holding for another, like, what is another 2 minutes?
Yep.
And I think that is kind of the thing. Whereas, like, I don't get me wrong. I think the 10-minute stalemate sucked, but I think if last is just horrible to hold, and you look up at the clock and you have 7 minutes to defend last, you're like, okay, well, fuck, we can't do that shit anymore. We have to move out because there's no way we're gonna defend for
Mm.
7 minutes, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
I think there is still like an element of that because again, like if if we reach a point in equilibrium where four-mans become like a pretty standard play and teams still don't pressure out of last after a four-man, then I'm like more open to that discussion. But for the time being, I'm still seeing teams like walk themselves into resets because they're scared and then they reset. And then
Yeah.
it's like, I wish this were easier when they still have options, they're not exhausting.
Yeah.
But while there's things to be said from a spectator perspective as far as the length of the overtime.
Mhm.
From my perspective, it is so much better than garbage time because in casting like the Poland, I was casting that on um the because you have hard garbage time where if anyone's
Yes.
unfamiliar, garbage time is what we call when there's a config with a hard time to end the game, the
Yeah.
team up rounds can theoretically be just mathematically like winning, where there's no amount of time for the losers to get enough rounds to win before the timer hits 0. So it's just garbage time. You're in the server still, but the game's been decided. And while
Yeah.
the actual hard literal garbage time is not the biggest issue because it's usually only like a few minutes, what
Mhm.
I really hate is the soft garbage time that's happening for like half, if not the majority of the game, where a team gets up rounds and then suddenly they just don't have to do anything to win.
Yeah.
Which, like, obviously, if you can get more rounds, it's nice. But in the case of a team stalemating on last and like refusing to push out and stuff like that, they're still like making a decision there. They're on the back foot. Like if they fuck up, then they just lose a round. Versus on the flip side, in a soft garbage time scenario, if you're the team pressuring into last with the round advantage, then you're incentivized to just slow things down, play the sniper, and just waste their time because you are getting closer to winning. And they're kind of forced to slip up or forced to do things aggressively. And yeah, I don't like it when the team with the advantage is the one incentivized to stalemate rather than the team with the advantage, I guess.
I think you've convinced me. I think in that case, I think I prefer. would be more interested in, again, nerfing last holds and increasing the round timer if that would help, rather than the infinite overtime, because you're absolutely right. Like, if you have like a team that gets up 2 or 3 rounds in the first 4 minutes of the game, you can just stalemate the entirety of the rest of the game if it's like a 30-minute time
Yeah.
limit or whatever.
That's what happened to
But
us on
I
Gully Wash QueeQuey like years ago. You clearly forgot about it
Yeah.
because we were
Yeah,
one match we were
I
down
remember.
like 2 rounds because we like shit the bed at the start of the game, and then the other team would just they turned into Europeans. They just held last the entire game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
think
you're
it does
right.
require a like meta adjustment because if you are just trying to do the standard two-man sniper plays, stuff like that into
Mhm.
last that worked with, 10 minutes of time, it's gonna quickly reset in a 4-minute round timer.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, if you want the other team to push out of last after four manning, then get the force and they will push out of last. Like they do not want to be playing disad last. They'd
Yeah.
rather set up disad on two most of the time. Or they'll do
Yeah.
that cool Australian thing that I only saw once at Denver, which is I think they got four-manned on, got forced, but instead of actually capping two, they just left like a sliver of cap time left to cap it, which was really cool to me because that was a back cap threat basically. And I think that it ended up being like not enough ad. I don't know if it was a four-man or whatnot, but it was a situation in which it was disad on last rather than capping two, which would have immediately got recapped from the push. They instead left it just ready to cap. So that back cap threat like disincentivized the push into last. Stuff like that was
That makes
creative and cool. But yeah, I mean, just like sending more players and seeing more back and forth there, I think opens better teams up to kind of outplay their opponents a lot more, I think.
Yeah. I will say as well as an aside, this isn't really relevant to the conversation, but I do miss half times. As a viewer, I know that's a lot of people just skip through the halftime. I can literally see it on like the analytics on the YouTube on the pods. A lot of people skip the intro and then they skip the halftime usually. But I do kind of miss the mid-game analysis. I know you can probably put a sponsor spot in there or whatever, so that'll that can help with sponsors. But the mid-game analysis, like after 3 rounds or whatever, I think that was don't get me wrong. Back in like this season 5, if you're playing against Froyotech, you're just gonna fucking have like a 2 minute, a couple minute uh for 3 rounds, and then they're just gonna immediately take 2 rounds and the game is over.
Mhm.
So like the halftime was just a waste of time. But for me, I think when it was like, especially if it was like mid to like low level invite teams or like too high level invite teams, like right now, or like if there like it was Froyo and G6 when G6 was coming up, like I think the mid game analysis was awesome. And maybe that's just because I used to watch like a lot of basketball and like traditional sports. But that's something I kind of miss now, and it's gone now.
Mhm.
Because and now casters kind of have to like they had to move from doing this like mid game analysis and like, oh, what can the losing team do to catch up or whatever, to now it's more of like, okay, let's have this conversation while there's like garbage time, like or like when
Yeah.
there's stalemating time, and I think that's just it's just different. But I don't know. I do kind of miss that as a viewer, but I know as a player, like, just having the extra pause is probably better because you can kind of do it whenever you want, but I don't know.
Yeah, you do give something up there with like the nice kind of structured because there have been I mean, I have enjoyed matches I've played and have really had really memorable matches on the config. Because the one thing we're not mentioning actually is while most of the time it's just going to be some like garbage time, just nonsense that sucks. Um, every once in a while you get the game where the team is just close enough to being able to tie things up and go into
Mhm.
overtime if they like play super well with a ton of momentum and they're able to do it. And like that
Yeah,
creates really exciting moments.
clutch.
But again, most of the time that's not the
Yeah.
case. And I think overall the current overtime thing tends to have just better overall gameplay.
Yeah, I think the other well, yeah, I agree. Um, but I'll come back here really quickly, because you guys were talking about it when I went to the bathroom real quick. But when talking about other game modes, I actually would like to see it. Just because I've seen Six's payload and attack defend and stuff like that. I have having talked to invite players, when Scourge was coming up, Scourge was like kind of a hot topic because it's like steel but smaller. And I thought that would have been really cool to see. we'll see. I don't think it's really a conversation to be had anymore. But I would like to see A/D or Payload be played. But the main issue is that there are no maps really made for sixes in either game mode. Like I've talked about before, when like if they have Payload, they need to uncap the cart limit, because if you roll an enemy team, like that's a big part of sixes, to where like if you are super winning, you should be able to super win against them. Whereas like in Highlander, you have like the cart bitch scout and
Yeah.
engineer push the entire time. Whereas you don't really want that in sixes. I think like if you wipe the enemy team, you can have all 6 players get on top of the cart and be able to push at what would that be? Up to 4, like I guess up to 10 times, like, or whatever. They could set it to 12, I guess, round it up, whatever, make it fine for pubs or whatever. But that is something that I would be interested in seeing, just because that sets like hard time limits. It adds a half, and like there is like, while the whole game realistically, the red team is trying to quote unquote stalemate, I think it would be interesting to see like what it does like to actually affect the metagame and how people think about pushing. Obviously, sniper sucks. Hopefully, there's like a map like, I think Bagel, for example, is a good map that deals with sniper, whereas there's no really like amazing like a angle that sniper can
Yeah.
take by himself. Like technically you can go up onto like the stairs and look into the enemy's main, but there's very little reason why you'd want to do that, because now you're in the range of the demo, and that's why Bagel will never get played in Highlander, because the sniper sight lines aren't egregious enough. Just glazing Bagel more, I guess.
Bagel's a good map.
But so let's sideline for a minute. So how do you go about making videos? Do you like script anything at all? Do you like put down bullet points, or you just always go after like
Mhm.
off the cuff?
It's been a mix of both. Some of my older videos were scripted fully, and
Okay.
I feel good at script writing, so um, I have that under my belt, I guess. But I
Yeah.
hate editing. Editing sucks. It's mostly just the getting footage part that's just so annoying.
Yeah.
So I transition more to just going stuff off the cuff. Every once in a
Mhm.
while, I'll have very specific things I want to bring up, but most of the time it is just fully off the cuff with a loose idea, kind of
Got it.
the main thing I want to babble about.
Okay. Well, have you considered getting a video editor then, or something along those lines?
Mm.
I,
I have, but also have not, in the sense that I don't know, because my the effort I put into my videos, from my perspective, is pretty minimal, in the sense that my contributions is almost entirely my experience, and I guess to
yeah.
some extent, like my personality, the way I like myself, can be compelling for people, but most of what I do is just from like my experiences playing the game.
Yeah.
It's not a whole lot of actual video making talent there. So I would feel kind of unfair having an editor who's actually doing the real work, but also like I wouldn't be able to like pay them any like a
Yeah.
fair amount. So
Yeah.
for the time being, I've been kind of happy just doing what I'm doing.
I get that. I remember having this conversation with Banny a long time ago about how, because I'm trying to remember exactly what we were talking about, but we were talking about his videos, and we're like, and the money that came from that or whatever. And like, so like, for example, we were talking about the Patreon, and I was like, hey, you should do demo reviews and stuff like that on your Patreon, which I guess I don't know if he actually took like in my advice on what he should add to his Patreon, but that was something I suggested. Maybe he just did it because that was his plan anyway. Regardless, but one thing that we had talked about, I was like, I don't think, and at the time, this is still like in Froyo's like dominance era. They're not getting, we don't have third place Spanny yet.
Yeah.
And so at the time, I was like, I was like, you are like the most influential competitive player, and Jay could have done this, for example, even. And I was like, what you say has a lot of influence, and
Mhm.
realistically people are just going to listen to what you have to say no matter what, like if you make a video. And so like if your videos are even moderately edited, people recognize, or pubbers, like if you ask them who Soapy is, they're not gonna know who that
Yeah.
is. They might, maybe if you're lucky they'll know who Habib is, but probably not. And so like, but people know who Banny is. And so just off of name recognition, I think you can gain a lot of clicks. But for him at the time, I was like, if you're gonna keep doing all of these, like all of your videos are the same video over and over, where you're just doing these like pub montages, you get crits and whatever. Like I think that's cool. But if you had any like I'm not saying your videos need to be Uncle Dane level or anything like that, but if you had moderately edited videos, I think with his position at the time, or like any high level player right now, like if you're an invite and you have the ability to edit or have someone else edit your videos or anything, I think that is something that's kind of missing. And but not just in competitive TF2, but I just mean TF2 in general. Like I think there is a market from like even if like Habib or whatever wanted to come in and just, I mean, I don't know, Hubert the Fish, whatever, comes in and he's like, oh, okay, I'm an invite player and this is what I think, and and makes videos on that. I think that would
Yeah.
be influential. I think you would have a market there. They don't need to be the best edited videos of all time, but like I can think of like Zayn right now in Smash Brothers. Like he makes like they're kind of highlight videos in a way, but he goes about it like right now with his like, oh, he's trying to get every single character to Grandmaster or like
Or
invite essentially for those non-Smash players in Smash. And so I think that is interesting. Like you don't need to do challenge videos or whatever, but you can just talk about, well, X thing. And if they, can show footage of that or have a video, like an editor show footage of that, or you gain the footage and you send it to an editor, anything along those lines. I think like when people like, it can have a good impact. Like when Banny was doing Death Merchant University, I don't know if people know, but Shonik used to edit videos for Banny
Mhm.
back in the day. And now he's this, a big editor on his own. And those are still some of his most viewed videos of all time, just because I mean it had good editing, but it was also like this is an authority figure talking about this. I'm not like, and I not saying you need to be Banny, but I'm saying like any invite player could do that, or I mean even if you're an advanced player, like I think
Yeah.
for you even like with having the low effort, like the low edited videos where you have like your demos and stuff like that. I think a lot of people, especially you have a lot of influence in RGL. Like most of the Sixes staff listens to you,
Mm.
for example, and or at least your videos, I should say. And so, but like if you expand that, I mean, that you have pub players. You always have the one guy who always comments about like 100, like, oh, okay, we'll try this in a
Yeah.
100 player server or whatever. Like, there's that one guy every time, and so like it has a little bit of influence outside of that. And I think that, I mean, me and Broccoli, I guess, is an invite demo man now, but I'm always just gonna be like a low competitive level player, like pleb who makes videos. But I think if we have like a higher level player, you have more authority, and so like your videos don't have to be quote unquote like as good or whatever, like the editing quality. But I think like the influence there can come out personally.
Mm.
But maybe I'm
Mm.
just that's something I'm looking for.
I started making videos actually because I was coaching a newbie cup team and I was like, okay, I could just like tell these guys the same thing that I would tell anyone else, or I could record it and then for posterity's sake, just send it to anyone who asks in the future. And I did
Yeah,
that. And then I just started kind of like talking about the game a bit. Um, with one actually was like an early video again, so edited, talking about an argument for competitive demos specifically to learn how to jump. Because
yeah,
unlike rocket jumping, which is super applicable in game, sticky jumping not so directly applicable. But I make the case that like, hey, it's still worth learning. Like, there's still value to this. Um,
yeah,
Very much geared towards the Sixes audience,
yeah,
but then kind of just enjoyed making videos. And then as time went on, I really started to appreciate the value of having competitive content um,
yeah,
in a way that I didn't anticipate, just
yeah,
because um, I think that Sixes, from a literal metagame standpoint, is doing fine. I think that um, RGL seems stable. The metagame is
yeah,
fun. It's enjoyable to play. There's a lot of really good institutions that are pretty standard at this point, like
yeah,
logs and serve me and stuff. Like you can play Sixes, but no matter what, I mean, in the age we live in today, you are inherently going to be competing for time and attention just through media. And
yes,
that's kind of just an
absolutely.
inherent aspect of it. And I think that having Sixes content in any form is just kind of nice. I've
Yeah,
done a lot of videos um, where I talk about and argue in favor of Sixes and whitelist things and stuff like that with what I think are reasoned arguments.
mhm,
And a lot of it is just tackling misinformation because a lot of like the anti-competitive hatred is mostly just like a lack of
knowledge.
actual knowledge.
Mhm,
But I found that that's honestly like not as helpful, or you know, comparably useful to just like talking about sixes and just humanizing it,
Yeah.
because like
Go ahead.
just having people out there familiar with it is doing a lot. And I do wish, like as you mentioned, more invite players or just anyone just were making content or just doing things, because like TF2 is not an esport, it's a hobby for people. And I think it's really cool when people actually do things to contribute to their hobby, whether it
Yeah,
be
absolutely.
something that they're good at. Like, for example, an old friend of mine just programmed an ELO system for the main season that we were playing just because he was able to and decided to want to do that. Like stuff like that, I
Yeah,
think is really cool. More people should
agreed.
Do that.
It's
Yeah, I mean, I
it's
go ahead.
funny you mention like social media and like competitive too, because I know when I started with QueeQuey and I were on the same newcomer team back in season 3 of RGL, and when I
Oh
started,
yeah.
I immediately noticed that there was like, other than Banny at the time, there was like a complete and utter
Yeah, it's a void.
lack of competitive Team Fortress 2 content, which is actually why I made my first couple of videos, which now I look back at them and I kind of
Same,
cringe for a
same,
number of reasons.
Mm.
But
same.
but I will not take them down, even though I'm embarrassed, because there's really been
Yep.
nothing to replace them that's equal or better. So I was if you were uploading what you're doing now, Rumpus, like a couple of years earlier, you would have definitely been like my savior for looking for content on TF2, because there is just like, this game is 18 years old. I started playing in 2020, so that's only 13. That's the game was 13 years old at the time, and somehow after 13 years, there's very little actually useful content regarding
Yeah.
competitive on the platform, and it's kind of just. And I think I know why, but it's kind of a bummer, and the reason is because there is really very little monetary incentive
Mhm.
to pursue it.
Yeah, and
Yes.
I think for a while, well, from the perspective of um, just content for content's sake about competitive TF2, then yeah, there's definitely like a void there. I think if it is specifically competitive oriented, like tutorial stuff or like how to play the game, there is like a wealth of info out there, but it's all just so stratified and in just different little places that you need to know where to look. Like I know so many players got so much value out of like Marmalade reviews, for example. But you need to
Yes.
know who Marmalou is, and you need to be able to go like seek that out. By which point, like you're already like your foot is through the door well enough that you can get helped out
Yeah,
in like any number of ways. So like
Yeah.
having an actual like if we're talking less so content just as in like entertainment with a competitive spin on it, and more so how do you actually teach people how to play sixes specifically, then there's like a real lack of like a central hub that people can go
Yes.
to just have everything available. And this is something I talked about with an old video. I understand I'm contributing to that as well. Yes, there's some like quite valuable. I mean, I have some stuff that's more just like philosophical kind of, but I have some that's like very um valuable tutorial information. Like the one I can think of that I find like particularly valuable to people is how to track Uber, just because that's
Yeah.
something that is it can be a science, right? Like there's an element of just experience. You kind of feel out an Uber, but there's very clear um ways that you can go about tracking Ubers quite accurately. And I think like laying that out is important, but someone would need to know to look for that, right? It's not like really increasing the public's or the TF2 community's knowledge overall, I feel like.
I think a lot of it is just the difficulty in making, well, not only making a video that is actually truly informative in the context of sixes, but also getting it to show up in people's feeds. Like you kind of mentioned, like you have to know where to look. Like if you know who Marmalou is, then you can find a review. But if you are new to competitive, you probably don't know who Marmalou is. And the problem is when you look up guides, like your number one place is going to be like Google or YouTube, which I guess are
Mhm.
the
Yeah.
same thing. But you're going to get a whole slew of stuff. Like there's a lot of people who have made like Highlander guides that are real short that I've seen, and as somebody who plays Highlander at a relatively high level, I'm like, okay, maybe like 40% of this is correct and the rest is just garbage. Like it's
Yeah.
Yeah.
horrible advice. But at the same time, I'm not going to condemn the person who made that, because like honestly, in my experience as somebody who's also created guides that are subpar and like only 40% correct, I know it's effective still, because most of the time people don't need uh they're not actually looking They don't actually need to be told how to play. They just need a reason to go try, I think.
Correct.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I mean, there's some element as well, like the more that you can, I guess watered down is not, it has like a bit of a negative connotation, but the more you can project the ideas and kind of principles that you're trying to talk about to a broader, less informed audience, you're inherently going to be losing details. Like no one is gonna watch a video on how to play demo and come away with both knowing what a demo's basic role is in a mid fight while also knowing where to play and what to trap when holding Snake Water second, for example. Like those are two different things of levels of detail that just aren't really compatible. So you kind of have to find that balance between to what level is it going to be accessible or to what level is it actually going to be detailed and informative, I guess. And I think there is a good balance that can kind of be found between the two.
I agree. I mean, for me, like my target audience has been the high level, casual, low level competitive player personally. But that's just like what I'm thinking about when doing it. And I fully understand that, like, for example, my newest video with like the how to for NG and sixes, like, was I playing an invite? No. Was I like I was playing in a low div, but to be honest, for the fact that there is no resources currently for anyone who wants to
Right.
do that, this is better than nothing. And well, some of that age poorly, probably. But for anyone who's getting started, this is going to be something. I mean, I remember when we started, I remember getting linked like what Marxist videos,
Yep.
which at the time were already like 10 years old.
Yep.
And so like starting in 2020 and were made in like 2010, 2011, whatever. And so like I was like 90% of this video is outdated because this is before the scout speed buff. So like what am I supposed to do as a soldier when scouts get to mid, like, or like your medic gets to mid at the same time as your scouts, like, and I think a part of that is like knowing where to look and stuff like that. But I think the other thing as well, like, is getting people that are mostly interested into competitive to realize that they actually can play, because I feel like a
Mhm.
lot of people are barriered out. The main one being that a lot of players who are interested in competitive TF2, they have one of like two mindsets. One, they think that they need to play a certain game mode first. Notoriously, people are like, "Oh, well, you need to play Highlander first before you play sixes because XYZ."
Really?
I hear that so often. It
That's
has been a
crazy.
thing since I've started playing TF2 in general. Like when people are talking about playing competitive TF2, everyone's like, "Don't play." I'd be like, "Oh, I want to play sixes." They'll be like, "Well, play Highlander first, so that way you can get used to it." Like Uncle Dane jokingly said that it was like a noob trap. Like you can play whatever you want, and it's going to be more like a pub or whatever. Which I kind of disagree with here and there, but it's a different conversation. Besides the point. So but, for me, I think people are waiting for this, like, barrier, this person to tell them, be like, "Yes, you are good enough," whatever, and, I mean, I remember our first season, there was a team called Santa Fe Laundromat, and there were 2 players on the team that had a couple of 100 hours in TF2, but literally the other 4 players on the team had, like, 10 hours in TF2 and were like, "I'm gonna sign up for sixes," and I was like, they won 1 mid the entire season, which I every single week in Newcomer, we had this pug group, and every week we would see if they won, and they never did, obviously. But the high level like newcomer teams were rooting for them, and I thought it was hilarious. And I ended up talking to the team leader later. He told me that when they won that one mid, the first mid on their last match of the entire season, they were like, it was like winning the Super Bowl. And I was like, hell yeah, dude. I was like, you guys, like the people who come in and they lose every week and they still show up, they're the goats of competitive TF2.
True.
To be honest. They keep it going. Yeah, you might lose every week, but they just come in. They just bash their head against the wall, and they have a good time. And I'm like, just Chads, honestly.
Yeah.
But I think the thing is I think the problem is that a lot of like TF2 players in general, when they're playing pubs or whatever, a competitive player, like maybe they're not like quote unquote try harding or whatever. Maybe they're literally playing as like Fat Scout in a pub. Like I've been called a try
Mhm.
hard by playing Fat Scout in a pub, and I'm like, dude, I'm literally using the family business and not using my minigun. Like, what do you want me to do? Um, and so I think they see these players that are a lot better than them, or like an invite player comes in, like if Boar rolls up in your casual match and he's playing sniper and he just goes on a 40 kill streak or whatever, like, what are you supposed to do? Like, this player is so much better than you, that which means, oh my God, all these competitive players must be so amazing,
Right.
XYZ. And I think that adds a level of intimidation. And so that's why for me, I think I'm the bridge the gap guy. I think I want to make it so that way the competitive is less intimidating. People need to realize that like there is no right time to get into competitive TF2. I mean,
Yeah.
if you're busy in your life and you have other things that you need to do, like for me, next season I probably won't be playing because of trying to graduate. Like school is more important. But if you're just not doing anything, or like you're already working, doing whatever, like your life is normal and you just are interested in playing, but all you're doing at night is like pubbing or whatever, like, and you want to take that step up, like there's nothing stopping you. Everyone in newcomer sucks. Like who cares? Like if you're like Broccoli, when he started playing, he had 500 hours in TF2 and I had over 2000. And when we started playing, Broccoli was way better than I was. So like hours don't matter. And
Yeah.
so like it's just one of those things where like it matters on like how you play. Like if Broccoli was practicing, quote unquote, I mean before I was, I was mostly just like a pubber for most of my hours. And so like there's no right time to get into it. You just jump in. And I think pub players or whatever like need to realize that, or realize like, oh, it's not always just a huge competition. Don't get me wrong, there's new strategies and different things that you can try. Like there's a lot more viable strategies in sixes than you think. And more importantly than that, like you get on a team and you just have fun. Like I mean, I some of the
Yes.
best times in being on a team were even just doing what I would call like quote unquote like extracurricular activities, like we're playing Jackbox or whatever. Like all the
Mhm.
emotes in my Discord server were made from us playing TKO on Jackbox and just hanging out, like being friends. And that is a big part of it. And so like one part of me, like the reason for the engineer in sixes, and like I'll maybe do things later on, is like anyone can play. You don't need to be a specific type of player. Don't get me wrong, you're more likely to lose, don't get me wrong. But if you're just playing just so you can play with your friend or whatever, like you're like, this is my friend group. One of the guys really likes engineer, whatever, and that's his main class, and he sucks at scout. Like I suck at scout, but I'm a soldier player. But like if that's the player, just have him on your team. Yeah, you'll be the weird team or whatever, but what matters more is hanging out with your friends and having a good time and playing this together than anything else. And I think that communication, like Lazy Purple kind of did a good job with that when communicating it, but I think
I think. Hang
in the
on. Hang
way
on.
that
I
he
think
communicated it. Yeah, go
you
ahead.
need the admin team needs to get a Nike sponsorship. Just do it. Just play competitive
Yes,
TF2.
yes, exactly,
That sums
exactly.
up your
Yeah.
tangent.
I've
Yeah.
been trying to well, it's something I've said explicitly in a couple videos, but have tried to bring up more often, and it's just that your there is a barrier between casual and competitive play, but it's not your skill level. It's just like
No.
actually getting used to the format, getting used to communicating with people, working on a
Yeah.
team, stuff like that. And yeah, I mean, as you mentioned, like the I think all you actually need to try out sixes is it helps to know like how all the weapons work. It helps to like be at least competent at TF2. Not good, but just like
Yeah.
you're not lost, right? Um, and then anything past that, like DM past that, like helps a little bit, but honestly not as much as the hours you put in after making the transition, because you
Mhm.
start on relatively even footing, breaking into sixes. Again, it helps to know like the basics about like, oh, like what Ubers are and like them, but it's like sure that'll help. But it won't help you nearly as much as just getting sixes 50 hours earlier.
Yeah. I 100% agree.
Well, people always
Um,
ask me like, "Oh, how many hours do I need to play like X or Y or Z?" And the answer is always like, "I don't know. Like, just there is no number. Like,
Yeah.
hours matter. To, like, you can get a general idea of like whether or not somebody's going to have like decent DM based off of their hours. But even then, there are players with thousands of hours who are worse than like a fresh install who's just like a CS god. So it's I agree with the sentiment of just you have to like there's always going to be a barrier no matter how long you've played Team Fortress 2 just because competitive is different from everything else. So you need to get into it and then you'll learn. The faster you get into it then you'll start learning. So the faster you'll
mm.
learn basically.
Oh my God, teammates that communicate. Spy is bad because people can communicate. That's crazy. Like, no. Uh, well, all right. I've been recording for about 2 hours. I know there's like two like bullet points that are left, but I think that's kind of like a good place to wrap it up for now. focused entirely on competitive this entire time, but I think that's a kind of good place to call it if you guys are okay with that.
Sure.
That's
Or is
fine
there
with me.
anything that you wanted to talk about? I guess I should ask.
No, nothing really comes to mind. I think we covered a bunch of stuff.
I don't care at
Okay.
all. I don't care one bit about MVM, I'll be honest with you. So we can just cut it
Yeah, I
off
see
here.
this bullet point. I have not been keeping
I
up
mean,
with anything.
the hard part is finding things to talk about with you because you're such an open book. Like you just talk about everything competitive
Yeah.
related on your channel. So it's like, well, I mean, you know, you could talk. We could talk about or we could pull the rest of the YouTube scene and go, guys, we need to bring back Quickplay. I have nothing of value to add to this conversation because I'm not really that
The
good, and this game is 18 years old. And Quickplay, like, so sick of it.
I think it's interesting though, as someone who was around back then. I mean, I started playing TF2 back in 2012. I understand where people are coming from when talking about quick play, but I don't think people are asking for the right thing. And I think that's they want they don't realize that ad hoc connections will probably never come back. For one major reason, which is that they don't realize how so like ad hoc connections you can connect to whoever through like just clicking join on them. But you could also do that with servers. And they'll one thing that I've seen is that they blame a lot of the bot crisis on casual, which makes no sense if because you can have all right, I'll skip all the programmer talk, but just imagine instead of bots being confined to a party of 6, they can have a party of 18 or have a
And,
party of like 13 and ruin every single pub
and they
in
can
the entire
target
game.
and they can harass you specifically because they can join
Correct.
you off of Steam. So you have to go full undercover mode, and then either way, you end up with a
Yeah.
similar situation where you just can't play with your friends without.
Yes.
You know, it's just I don't know. I get their
Yeah,
complaints because there are genuinely problems with casual, but
I
I'm just
agree.
genuinely I don't know about you guys, but I'm just genuinely sick of hearing people
Af-
bitch about that
After
over and over again for like the last
after
3 years.
digging through the code, I think some of the like I said, some of the complaints that they have, I agree with. Like not being able to switch teams, I think is kind of so I agree with. Just because like back in the day, like I'm willing to bet 90% of my dueling minigame uses were against friends
Yeah,
rather than just random people on the other team. Like it's way more funny to get into a game and like duel your friend and then like do the I don't know, the most stupid thing, to be able to kill them or whatever. So like I agree with that. The map timers and stuff like that. Like I get those. Those are all more server settings than matchmaking settings. Or they complain about skill-based matchmaking, which I get I is fair. But the ad hoc connections, I think, is the thing that they're missing out on, or like wanting to get rid of levels, or they say that like casual killed community servers. But as someone who was around back then, no, quick play killed community servers. Yes, you could click into it and click community servers, but talk to any server owner from back then, and they'll say that quick play killed community servers because they couldn't get queued into, or like when even when they added the option and then later removed it. When they had the option to add it, basically no one clicked it, and basically everyone played in, you know, regular Valve servers regardless. So like again, I agree with a lot of the sentiment. I think they kind of need to tweak what they're asking for because if it does come back, I think people don't realize that it's going to be another like finger off of the monkey's paw. Like we asked for MVM and we asked, and we got man versus machine through the bots, and then we asked for a problem to the bots, and then they muted free to plays, and so like we pulled the monkey paws twice. So like be careful. I think they just need to
yeah.
refine what they're asking for.
I've
I think is the issue.
I have a Google Doc that I've had for like 6 months now where I want to like do like a wish list, but I'm afraid
Yeah.
I'm not afraid to upload it, but I'd rather focus on doing things that are positive because I'm sick of the larger YouTube community as a whole spending most of the time
Yeah.
complaining. When Valve literally released, like, if you're a large and influential YouTuber with like 100,000 subscribers, maybe you could actually, I don't know, like do something and
Yeah.
use the tools that we've been given to try to make some sort of improvement. Like, if
Yeah.
you really think Quickplay is that good, then you can make your own version of TF2 with Quickplay and see if it takes off. Like, kind of
I
like akin to Uncle
I mean
Topia, but
any
I don't know.
yeah.
I don't want
Any
to
mod I don't know.
really get into
But
the
I the
conversation because I'm just sick of hearing it. But I'll
Yeah, I
probably
the
make
have
a
only
like
video eventually.
I know enough to know that that's like a discussion and argument people
yeah.
have, but beyond that, nothing. I
I
did
think
like I started playing in like 2012, so I was
Same.
around for it. But yeah, I don't know.
I think the only thing that they really need is for someone to open the source code and look at what the actual problems are. Like, for example, one of the main things from what I understand from the code that I've looked at, is like when you you join, try to join a friend that's in a party, the way that it handles party joins from the party join perspective is technically correct. So there's like a priority queue, in which you should be the next person that joins the server. The problem is that on the server side, servers like casual servers are locked until a certain point. So like they don't allow joins within a certain period of time or whatever. I couldn't find the part that actually determines that. But like on the default, when you matchmake into a server, like the server starts or whatever, no one can join the server for X amount of time until the coordinator decides that people can join the server. They just need to ask for that to be opened up, so party joins are easier. Maybe do the skill-based matchmaking removal, whatever. I don't care. But I don't think I think they can refine their ask a little bit more and maybe get more of what they want. And from there, it's fine, whatever. But I don't think there's any other like really big TF2 discourse other than the MVM news. And I was like, people are getting way too hyped about this, thinking that we're gonna get new rebalancing, and we're gonna get 10 new Australians and whatever. But I think that's just kind of always been the TF2 community
Yeah. I mean,
since I've been around.
MVM gets like a lot of views, and I really don't get it because I think it's kind of boring. But whatever. Uh, I'm just happy. Honestly, I'm just happy that there seems to be like more lands going on, and I feel like there's maybe it's just my YouTube recommendations, but I feel like I've been getting more videos of like actual like TF2 content for the sake of making TF2 content and not just. I have a large following on YouTube, but I don't know what else to talk about, so I just complain all day videos that I have gotten for the last couple of years. But
Yeah, I
I don't know,
think
maybe that's just me.
to be honest, I think that's just with competitive TF2 kind of opens that up a little bit as well, because there's so little content made on competitive TF2 that even existing things that have been made or ideas that have been visited, once you have like a higher level understanding, or like you've played against higher level players, that's probably the best way to put it. Like I'm gonna have a better idea of what to do, or like what scouts are capable of when I get play against like bot mode, rather than if I've only played against pubbers. Like, so that way at the time when even if I'm playing casual and I play against bot mode, then I'm like, oh shit, like this scout is invincible, or whatever. And so like I think that, or like kind of revisiting it through like fresh eyes, I think helps a little bit, and adding a little bit of perspective from both ends. But yeah, so I agree. All right.
Yeah, I think more
I
people should just like make content that's actually like about TF2 rather than like about TF2, you know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
like I think like don't get me wrong, like the actual um the design and everything in this game is probably one of the big reasons that I got into it back when I was a kid, but
Yeah.
it's not the reason that I'm playing anymore. And I think that the actual like mechanics and design of the game is like there's a lot there that's worth talking about. I don't think that those by any.
I think that's a good. It's funny because I got in just because of a friend, and then who got also in because of a friend, not because of the art style or whatever, but because it was just a good game. And so, but yeah, I think I'll call it there. Oh, Broccoli, you wanted to say
Oh, you're
something
still
real quick?
recording? I thought you ended it before.
Yeah, I was, I
Oh,
was,
okay.
I was.
I,
All right. Well, I'm gonna call it. Oh, go ahead.
no, you're good. You can call it. I don't.
All right. All right. Good night.